Okay, so hello and welcome to another episode of the Wiki Weekdays podcast. I'm your host for this one, Karl Smallwood, joined as ever by the lovely and luscious Lucas Holland.
Hello.
And for anyone unfamiliar with the Wiki Weekdays format, this is a series where myself and Lucas will scour the lengths and breadths of the internet to find a wiki on a subject we're interested in and bring them both forward for discussion and competition.
That is correct, but
Isn't that right?
this time we don't actually have competition because last week's episode was just a guest episode, so we all win. We're all just winners.
We're all winners. Like, we got a special guest in. We got to take a week off from the podcast to do other things, and hopefully our audience at home got to listen to a new and interesting perspective from a new and interesting person they may not be familiar with somewhere else out there on the internet. And in regards to last week's podcast, at least for the audience, it was last week. For us, it was a month or so ago now. But yeah, something we didn't mention in that podcast because it wasn't sorted yet, because Davin's a very busy person, is that Davin's fee for that episode is going to be donated to, at their request, a charity aimed at helping children. So their fee for that episode will be donated to the Trevor Project. And you can go see proof of that donation in our Discord, found link below, after this episode finishes.
Yeah, so they suggested something that just helps children out, right? And then you suggested the Trevor Project
which helps young children and teens and stuff, specifically trans teens. It helps, which I feel if anyone needs help right now,
it not only just trans people in general, but also trans people in America right now. Obviously, I feel as though right now just everyone in America needs help, but especially the trans community. It's one of those of that's something that Davin cares about, we care about, and also we felt like with Davin being over in America, it was good to donate over to an American trust.
If they've been British, doing mermaids or something like that. But yeah, just the thought that add that little addendum to last week's podcast. And as Luke's alluded to, we do have an element of competition to this series. So after this episode is finished, and if you're listening to it within a few days of it going live, you can go check the Discord I just mentioned, link below, and you can vote on which wiki you thought won this week. And to be clear, we don't want you to vote on which wiki was on the subject you're personally most invested in, but which one you thought brought forward the best discussion.
And do we think that just every time we have a guest on, they just automatically win? Rather than saying we all win, I think they just win for being the guest.
Oh yeah, that's when they lent us their time. And
obviously, we keep offering these people money, and every single time it's don't pay me, just pay a charity. It's I don't need the appearance fee. It's okay. It was fun to come on and talk, and we're but we feel like we should give something to somebody, right, for you taking up your time. So we just every time so far, we've given the money to charity, and just that's not to disparage anyone that takes an appearance fee, because it's your time, get paid for it. But yeah, it's been surprising so far that everyone's been nice enough to just be no, just leave it, it's fine.
Yeah, well, it's a big secret of the internet that it's a collaborative process. It's not what you know, it's who you know, as they say. Was more of that for another time. And Lucas, speaking of making some fucking money, we have some things to shout out, don't we?
We do? Question mark?
Well, Patreon.
Well, right? Yeah, of course, yes. Karl, I've just pre-ordered a Switch. I need help with money. It's I'm not saying I have the money for the Switch. I'm just saying I'm gullible and financially irresponsible.
This is true.
Yeah.
In which case, then you better start earning some money, mate, and shout out these patrons.
And of course, the first person that we have to shout out is Be of Awesome BBB.
Yes, so when you say BBB, you mean they've put 3 little B emojis after their name. So I'm going to say long-standing gimmick. I'm going to say a newly inspired gimmick we have for these shout-out tiers over on Patreon is inviting people who subscribe to that level on Patreon to try and really fuck us over with the name they pick. And people have started to take that in stride. For example, Be of Awesome has put a bunch of B emojis in their name.
Which I couldn't get to work on Photoshop, in the time that I had to, do this today with Adobe fucking me about. You'll know if you've watched the little pre-show element, but
yeah, it's untranslatable. It's like Prince's name, right? When Prince changed the name to a symbol and they had to send a floppy disk to like music magazines of like, here's the font that you use with the symbol in there, so you can type Prince's new name.
Right. And one thing that I keep mocking Karl for has been, Karl, you keep like asking people to give you new challenges and then not
Yes.
realizing that like Karl challenging people to hit a character limit means that I've got to figure out how that works displayed above us on the Discord, like on the OBS, like just trying to figure out how to fit these super long names in there. So I've done my best. Hopefully, it's like legible still, but I had to fit like
Yes.
an entire 180 characters in this tiny little special thanks section up above us.
Which is, you know, it's a challenge in of itself, and I think it's funny. And speaking of funny, the next one we have to shout out is Dan Dilly. Or Dan Dilly. I want to say it's like, 'cause it's all written as one word.
Yeah, and we'll try and just like, speed through these names now so that we can get to the podcast and the other housekeeping elements. But we also have to thank Fallopian Starship,
Followed by Judge Dredd.
followed by Kickin' Bucket knows and laments the character limit for a Patreon display name is at only 128 character.
Without an R. So that's character without an R. Followed by Lamdy Llama.
And Little Ghost,
Lucille De Steele.
Tam McKee,
And Wu Wong King, Day Willy Wonka, Fondue Way to Make the Name Longer.
So if anyone wonders how any of them are spelled, they're all displayed above, including the people on our $10 tier, who are like our little, podcast supporters. And
I think it was our peanut
to make
gallery.
sure that
Our cheering squad.
it's like our little cheering squad, our little like producers, like our podcast producers, so to speak.
That's what they use. That's the term people use, right? To make you feel warm and fuzzy. I was thinking more like that shade from Hades, the one shade that supports Zagreus.
But thank you very much. And Karl, we do have something else we need to mention, which is, of course, Pet of the Week.
Yes. Perhaps the most important thing. Like, this podcast exists to shout out Pet of the Week. Like, the other 2.5 hours was like just riffing on video games and comic books. It's not important. What's important is the Pet of the Week. And the Pet of the Week this week is Leo,
And
who's just like having a great time.
I want to extend the picture out a little bit just for video watchers right now. We've just taken away that Pet of the Week text and just letting you see like that Leo is in frame with like a very goofy looking jack-o'-lantern that I couldn't quite fit into the same square picture, but just
It's actually a really good photo. It's like the dog is giving a big goofy toothy grin right in front of a pumpkin, which has carved into it a big goofy toothy grin.
well, that's why I had to pick that picture for Pet of the Week, because there was a couple of good submissions, but like that picture is just excellent of like the big toothy grin and the big toothy grin.
Yeah, and if you think you've got a better photo of your pet or a random animal that you've seen out there, because I keep saying, like, if you just see an animal go past your window, get a picture of it. Blurrier the better. Let's go. Feel free to go post it in the Discord. You'll find link below in the associated section, and vote on any pets that you see there.
Yeah, of course. And like, I think like Leo technically didn't get the most amount of votes this week, but just that goofier picture, it spoke to me. And there's also just that element of me being like, fuck it, if a picture really speaks to me, it gets a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? It's our podcast and our channel. We can make that executive decision every now and again. Like, you know what? No, this one. Yeah, that's the winner.
It was a very close call, and that picture, I just saw it and was like, that's a great picture. That needs to be the Pet of the Week. But yes, that was just a little tiny bit of like executive meddling in that one, I will admit.
Whose line is it anyway rules, right? Where the points don't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is that all of us here, have fun.
We got to find a vibe.
And Leo's having so much fun.
Leo was just the vibe for this week.
It is, just sitting there going, oh. It's like when you see like those pictures of dogs that are absolutely fucking zonked out on tranquilizers before or after surgery, right?
Yeah.
What's happened with your dog? Like your 2 dogs, which are sausage dogs, when they get like zonked out on painkillers before or after, like when they got fixed, do they just go really floppy? Like, would you like those water willies you can get? Those like little water balloons full of water. They just go. Ugh.
Fortunately, they still have spines. Like,
or do they go like really stiff? Is it like try to carry like a sleeping bag? Sleeping bag's really stuff.
I don't know how to explain. They just get heavy. They don't necessarily go floppier or stiffer. They just get heavier.
Okay, I've always wondered.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's everything we need to shout out in regards to our housekeeping for the first half.
Put a link.
Oh yeah, there is. There's Lucas. There's something you've set up.
There is.
Speaking
Yes.
of executive decisions, you just posted about this in the Discord one day, and I asked to message you like, "What is this?"
Yeah, so I didn't want to commit to it, and I was just like, I'm just gonna post this in the Discord and see what happens. And I was just like there one night, late of an evening after editing, going like, what can we do for like podcast 100 that'll make things a bit different?
And when is podcast 100?
So that will be in 2 weeks' time.
Excellent.
We will literally be doing the 100th Wiki Weekdays podcast in 2 weeks. We'll be
How
doing
time
that live.
flies.
And yeah, basically, I'll post the link in the chat and I'll put it in the description afterwards and all that jazz. But I have set up a page where people can leave us like voicemail-esque voice messages. And the idea is that I think it maxes out at like 60 or 90 seconds. I can't quite remember. But I basically just ask people of like, hey, if you know, got comments to make, you've got thanks to be had, good words to had, you just want to say hello, you've got questions, you've got games for us to play,
Yep.
leave us a voicemail on there. And for podcast 100, if people don't abuse the system and I can find a decent amount of like voice messages on there to play, we will go through them live and react to them and add that as like the special 100th podcast element. If it doesn't go well, it won't be in the podcast and you'll know what's gone down.
Okay, so rather than like a traditional Q&A where we read out the questions or feedback or comments, people can just go and leave them themselves and we can react to them, as you said, live on camera. Presumably you'll give them a listen beforehand,
I'm
right?
gonna go through. Well, technically, I'm gonna get someone to vet them first. I've asked someone to do that for me, and then I'm gonna give them a listen afterwards and like be more selective. But yes,
Okay.
I've asked someone to like make sure, just in case like any specific person somehow wants to use that as a way to like specifically spread like hate to one of us. Just I've asked someone to vet it
Oh, so they
beforehand, so
so
I
they
don't have to listen to it.
so they can't even use like, oh, well, at least Lucas has got to listen to me calling him a twat.
Exactly right.
It's gonna be just some stranger who's like, well, was there
So one
anything
of
in
my
there
friends
insulting?
has been like, if anyone wants to like target you or call specifically, I won't send that message along to you.
So you won't even know it existed.
Exactly right. So yeah,
That's
there's
clever.
no chance of that happening, but at the very least, just I will be then vetting things that I think like might actually make for something we can react to. So if you're overly nice, we might just not put it in because I might feel it might make us awkward or anything. But just nothing
Yeah,
hateful
that's the
will
thing.
be
We are
put in
British. Keep
there.
that in mind.
Nothing hateful will get through those gates, and just yeah, I'll say just if you just want to say hello, that's fine. If you want to like I say ask a question or you got like a little like made up game that you can think of for us to play or something on the podcast that you think could be fun, like let
Okay,
us
a
know.
would you rather, a theoretical.
Yeah, just like silly little things like would you rather and theoretical questions and
Oh,
anything
let us
else you
know,
can
like,
think of.
your favorite episode or a topic that you've enjoyed or something new you've learned. Maybe what you listen to the podcast doing,
Yeah.
right? Like, or what you do while listening to the podcast, or what the episodes like serve for you. Like, do you watch them? Do you listen to the background feedback for stuff we could like do in the future? Whether it be a specific topic or maybe even just, hey Carl, I don't like your background.
Which again, I
Fix
probably
it.
wouldn't put in the podcast, but
This is a nice suggestion for something we
um,
could do.
yes, of course. And bear in mind, there's just two of us, so like, there's not like a team behind us doing extra things. It's just us two trying to figure things out. So in terms of suggestions, bear with us. But yeah, I just thought that would be like a fun thing. I want to try and make an effort to do something a bit different for like a landmark episode. We don't really normally make note of even what episode number we're on, but
No,
I
this feels like a
hopefully
pretty major one.
thinking I trust the community at this point and a lot of nice people, and hopefully just everyone can like chill about this situation.
Yeah, and if it ends up going well, maybe it's a thing we can incorporate into more content in the future.
Hmm.
But I guess that's a conversation for another day. That's not today. So, Lucas, you'll be going first this week, yes?
That is the
I
case,
introed.
yes.
In which case, what we're talking about, Monfrere, because it's not the thumbnail, because that's my topic.
That is your topic indeed. And for myself, I'll preface this with like I've been rewatching or watching, I suppose, a remastered and reanimated arc of One Piece.
Okay, so this
And
is like One Piece Kai, right? Or the
so
equivalent of One Piece Kai.
It's funny that you suggest that, Carl, because I know that you don't know about One Piece, so I thought I'd bring in the wiki for Dragon Ball Z Kai.
Oh, okay, so this is inspired by you watching the truncated version of One Piece. You thought you'd go track down the one on Kai. Okay, I'm interested because I never watched Kai. I'm familiar with it.
Right, yeah. And
Just
basically, like, with One Piece, with the Fishman Island arc, it was, I guess, one of, like, the arcs that was dragged out the most and kind of had a lot of, maybe not, like, filler, but just poor pacing in it, and a lot of moments where, like, every episode was noticeably just stretched out and a lot of elements were reused episode after episode, etc. And they've gone back and edited down the Fishman Island arc in One Piece to like 20 episodes. And
here's the thing: is there any other form of media you can think of where they do this?
yeah,
Where they
so
like
that's
just
why I
go
kind of
back in
wanted to
after the
have
fact and
a discussion about
truncate it?
this, because it's like, it's kind of unique to anime specifically, right? Of like the idea of
Yeah,
going back and not only reanimating a bunch of stuff and like remastering things. Like, you see remasters of like Blu-ray editions all the time and stuff, but
usually they're
outside
longer,
of
right? Director's
Star
cuts and stuff
Wars and
usually add more
stuff,
content in.
like
Yeah, that's
it,
the only parallel I can think of going back and adding new shit that wasn't in the original.
and
Like,
also
that's not like a director's
cutting
cut
stuff as well. Like,
for time or
as I say, the Fishman Island arc, when I watched it, I was like, okay, not only did they like reanimate and remaster this as like a break between doing the Eggman Island stuff, like they just cut a lot. And like
just
to an
weird.
extreme degree.
So I can't think of any other piece of media where this is common. Not officially anyway, because I know there are unofficial edits of things like Star Wars, which you mentioned, like the Machete Cut, I think
And
it's called.
like there's a very, in the One Piece community, very well known edit known as One Piece, where the fan community think that they've edited down One Piece to be like a more digestible product. And while I agree with that, I also think, similar to Fishman Island, they cut out too much and miss details.
Yeah, and there are tools that will allow you to do that. I think of like one of the most. It's not one of the most depressing things I've read because there's so many things that are depressing in this day and age. But
Yes.
just one of those things where you like read it and go, "That makes sense."
Hmm.
It's Mr. Beast. He's talking about an interview with him where his time. So, what do you do to relax? He's like, "Oh, as you imagine, I'm very busy a lot of the time. My time is not my own. I do like to read, though." I go, "Okay, is there anything you're reading at the moment?" He goes, "Well, I don't actually read. What I do is I've got an AI tool and I program in the book and it just condenses the book down for me so I can read it quicker." Yeah,
But how does the AI know what's critical to the story and what isn't?
yeah. I think it was Mr. Beast who said that. Like, I just know there was some YouTuber who like bragged about how they can read more books faster by using AI to read the books back to them.
There's audiobooks. If you're
Yeah.
busy and you want to consume books, audiobooks are a thing, and you can even listen to them faster.
I think it might have been him. Maybe I'd have to double check
Like,
that. But yeah, I know there's
yeah.
But that's the thing of like truncated versions of media seldom exist in an official format.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I can think of that would be comparable would be stuff like director's cuts, which are seldom shorter, but at least put forward as a definitive alternative viewing
And it's
of the original material.
yeah, with anime, it's a very specifically like notable thing because it is definitely like legitimate, because a lot of animes like Dragon Ball, like now current One Piece, are releasing alongside a manga. They're not waiting for arcs and stories to be done and then
Yeah.
animating that and bringing that story out. They are doing it in tandem, and that just means that a lot of the time the animation studios have to just pad episodes with either
Which
filler, do entire filler episodes or entire filler arcs, or they just stretch out like Dragon Ball is renowned for with just screaming.
And again, it's possibly entirely unique to the medium. Perhaps someone out there can give us an example of another form of entertainment where this has happened. Because I would love for it to be more common. I would love, for example, like Simpsons Kai. Give me like Simpsons Kai or something like that. Or like Law and Order Kai, right? Like condense like all 45 seasons of, looks like, or EastEnders. Got EastEnders Kai.
Oh man,
Condense 50 fucking
soap
years of
opera
storylines.
Kai. But it reminds me of kind of the way I consume a lot of random pieces of media through TikTok.
Oh no, that's
Where,
the word. Don't do that.
well, no. Like, if I go, oh look, this looks like a solid 6 out of 10 clip of a movie, like a solid clip of a proper like 6 out of 10 movie, and it's like, oh, here's 2 minutes of this movie that's got an interesting premise, but maybe isn't a great film or a great TV show. So I'm gonna watch like a few clips on TikTok to just fill in the blanks and kind of spend 20 minutes watching the plot instead of an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it may be. And just, that's maybe the most unofficial, unsanctioned way to ever approach that kind of shit, right?
I can see value in that, and something I will admit to doing before Wiki Weekends episodes, for example. Say if we do an episode on, I think we did on the Raid recently. I didn't rewatch The Raid 2 because I'd watched it like 6 months ago, but I did go onto YouTube and rewatch like 10 clips of all the fight scenes from the story beats.
Go to like
remind myself
the movie clips YouTube page and remind yourself of something that you've watched a lot of times, but
just to refresh my memory of specific things I like to point out. I would also like to say as well, movie clips can go fuck itself to the point because they put their fucking thumbnail and logo and watermarks over footage they don't own.
Yeah.
To the point where I have like a setting on my like Vegas that is just, oh, this is a clip from movie clips, and it frames it in 16:9 to cut off their fucking watermark. Just fuck them. It's not their footage.
See, yeah, I do a similar thing where I find that like point in the movie that's notable to find clips of. So I'll go to their movie clips thing, make note of what clips are notable, and then find a version of the movie that I can then capture on screen without their logo on it. Because it's not their fucking film.
It's not our movie, but it's certainly not fucking their movie either.
Yeah.
But that's a inconvenience that is inordinately minor, but it's still pissing me off to no end.
Yeah, definitely true. But
like, I'll be so down for fucking EastEnders Kai, man.
Because like
animated as well.
I definitely agree that like Dragon Ball Z Kai is one of those where Dragon Ball was quite bad for pacing. Notoriously bad for pacing and rather bad for filler, but it had interesting filler at the same time at times. Like
Goku learning to drive a car, right? It's one of the funniest fucking episodes.
Yeah.
But I think it should be canon because it's so fucking funny. Of like, why does he need to learn how to drive a car? He can fucking fly. No, do you know what though? It's God tier because you get to see him drive a car.
Well, as far as I'm aware, something like that wouldn't exist in Dragon Ball Kai because anything that's non-canon is immediately cut in a lot of these kind of situations.
Yeah, and I think in regards to Dragon Ball and a lot of early anime, something that is, again, quite unique to that medium, for at least for the versions that we see, is translation issues, right?
Yeah.
And especially back in the 90s, where just they didn't give a fuck. And it completely, in some cases, changes or ruins the tone.
Well,
or the look. Like, do you remember when like someone pointed out, hey, do you know like just Sailor Moon doesn't look like that? And I was like, wait, what do you mean it doesn't look like that? And it turns out that, when they shipped it over to like the West, just the version they had was color graded shit and they never fixed it. And they just copied that copy.
It's similar to like how every DVD copy of like Dragon Ball has some kind of piss filter over it, basically.
Yeah, well, they like frame it down in like 16:9. They like give everyone everyone bald.
There is like framing, video, or audio, or all of the above issues with like every single home release of Dragon Ball Z, and they've never managed to get just one version that is just correct.
Yeah, I remember talking to with Eric about this, where there is like supposedly it's a constant argument with fans of a series of what is the definitive version, and for him it's like what's the manga. Yeah. Everything else is just adapting that to various levels of accuracy, but just the amount of issues there are with each release of just like audio issues, visual issues, like the music, because I know a lot of people like the Bruce Faulkner soundtrack, but the Bruce Faulkner soundtrack is, I don't think it suits Dragon Ball.
Is that the one that was just like
It's the
stolen
version we
from other
got.
people?
Some of that, there's issues with that as well. There's some sort. I'm not sure if it's particularly Bruce Faulkner, but the tone of his music didn't really suit the tone they were going for with some of the action scenes and pivotal moments. Music can change the way you interpret a scene.
Yeah.
So they
And
changed that for later versions. It's crazy, right?
also just the dubbing. There's what like
Different voice actors,
the
different
different.
translations.
There's like 4, I think, different attempts to dub Dragon Ball Z, and ultimately one stuck with the current version that we've got with the current voice actors and stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure that because there's like the ocean dub and things like that. I'm fairly
Animation
certain that
dub.
early Dragon Ball Z had like 4 different times where they tried to dub it and got through the Saiyan arc, and that's why all of a sudden when we were watching it as kids, the voices just changed in the Frieza saga.
And no one noticed because you were kids, right? But here's the question of, is there anything else where that happens often enough for it to be something they have to address? 'Cause I can't think of any piece of media where that happens, because most media we'd consume comes from Western speaking countries where translation issues aren't really a thing. The
Yeah.
closest we might get is like K dramas and things like that, but to my knowledge they don't re-edit K dramas.
Yeah, I don't think that they've. I can't think of an example where they've fully just remastered, recut, retranslated things like that.
Yeah.
Episodes of that. There might be, changes in subtitles. I think a lot of Netflix translation on subtitles is pretty shoddy work. And
Yeah.
yeah,
You
so
get movies patched though. That's a thing, right? It's not entirely equivalent, but remember, like
yeah,
Game of Thrones. Like Game of Thrones, they were editing episodes while they were going out to
remember
remove
that.
like special effect, the coffee cup and the water bottles, right? In the last season.
Yeah, I think a famous example that it didn't really help was Cats.
Oh yeah,
Where
the butthole cup.
Cats was getting updated. It was getting patches while it was still in theaters. Yeah.
And people were rushing to see the unpatched version. People like the story there is Cats had unfinished and rough CGI in some scenes, and they were so embarrassed they sent out new copies of the film with that fixed. And then people were rushing to the cinemas that had the bad version. There's also, as I alluded to, the butthole cut. Supposedly, there's an early cut that was fully rendered, where every cat had a CGI butthole,
Mm-hmm.
and it exists somewhere out there,
Yeah, it does.
and we need to see it.
We do need to start on this wiki.
Yes, I mean, like, I'm just fascinated by the existence of this. Like I said, I can't think of any other media.
It just got me really thinking when I was watching Fishbone Island of like, there's not many examples of something like this happening where just entire stories are changed in such a dramatic way, in such an official manner.
That's the thing. It does happen. You get fan fiction, you get fan edits, but official is the term to use there. The closest we probably have is Star Wars.
Yeah.
Right? Where just George Lucas was like, as the god of the universe for like 40 years, would make wide sweeping changes to canon on a whim.
It's like, let's bear in mind that I can't remember whether it was that Jabba the Hutt was a guy in the first Star Wars movie or whether it was somebody telling Han to go see Jabba and it was a guy. But
He was played by a guy in early cuts that George Lucas cut out, but then in later versions, they had those scenes and they used CGI to put a Jabba model over him.
But there are versions, I think it's the VHS version, exists where the guy is playing Jabba, right?
I think so, and I think they frame it as he's like Jabba's henchman or something like that.
But that might be a retcon, and we don't know.
Maybe.
And
or it could be the Mandela effect here, because I know I've seen the clip of the guy walking with Han Solo.
Yes.
And like then Jabba the Hutt gets CGI'd over him, but I could just be remembering a breakdown of the VFX.
Exactly, yeah. I think that was part of a version of Star Wars. Let us know in the comments, but fairly certain the scene where Jabba the Hutt, or as you say, like a henchman of Jabba the Hutt, was just a dude talking to Han Solo instead of Jabba talking to him, and that's where you get like a moment where not only is there CGI Jabba, but Han Solo walks over him and gets awkwardly like digitally moved upwards and down again as if he's stepping over the tail of Jabba.
Yeah, and they even edit in Jabba making like a little yowl as Han Solo steps on his tail.
Right, yeah.
But I'm not sure like exactly what the origin. I'm not sure if that original scene was ever in a cut of Star Wars, or if
Yeah,
it was
again,
that
I
they had
might
the
be
shot.
remembering that I've seen that shot, but it might be because of like a deleted scene or
Or you've seen the
VFX
behind the
breakdown or
scenes
something.
breakdown. The
Yeah.
wildest one is Femi Taylor, who played Ula. Like she's like the one of Jabba's dancers.
Right.
And initially, she's just in the background of a shot. Like she's the one who gets dropped into the Sarlacc pit.
Mm-hmm.
Not Sarlacc pit, sorry, the Rancor. Like with the Rancor.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
And in the original version, she just drops down, and then you hear her scream, and that's it. George Lucas was like, "Well, should we see what happens to her? I'd like to show what happens to her. Can we track down the actress?" And she wasn't an actress anymore because she did it for some money.
New shoot.
Yeah, so he did a new shoot, and they tracked down the actress Femi Taylor, and she wasn't really an actress anymore. She was a dance teacher, I think. And they're like, "Do you want to be in Star Wars again?" She's like, "Sure. What do I need to do?" And they're like, "Well, we're gonna CGI you, so you don't really need to do that much." But then they realized she'd not really aged in like 20 fucking years. And when they put her in the costume, she looks identical to how she did like in the 80s. So George Lucas was like, "Well, let's build the Rancor set again and film a 1 second shot of her turning around and seeing the Rancor and screaming."
I was gonna say,
And that's all that they did.
Isn't it pretty much just looks at the Rancor and goes, "Ah!"
Yeah, that's it. But to do that, they rebuilt that entire set from scratch. Got the actress out of retirement, put her into the costume again, and filmed that 1 second reaction shot. And what cracks me up about that is that's the same scene where they have the terrible CGI singer on the stage singing Jabba's song.
Yeah.
And I always found that so indicative of George Lucas not giving a fuck, right? That for a 1 second shot that didn't matter. He went to all the effort of doing a practical set with a real actress with a like really well recreated like costume. In the same scene, it was a fucking CGI monstrosity that looks terrible.
Yeah, that's wild. I can't believe they actually went to all that effort for just that one shot of a woman going,
A 1 second reaction shot.
It really goes to show how much he was just obsessive over this.
It was never finished. We've talked about it a few times, and I am inclined to believe the rumor that George Lucas repeatedly tinkered with Star Wars as an excuse to release definitive special editions of the movie because he got absolutely rinsed on merchandising rights but he owned all the rights to the movies. He made more money.
Whereas I do think that Dragon Ball Z Kai was like a legitimate reaction to criticisms of like, look, this is just messy. It's badly paced. The voice actors change early on. Like,
yeah, I feel in that case it was legitimate artistic desire to have a definitive version for the West, right?
Exactly right. It's like, can we just get an actual cut of Dragon Ball Z that makes sense?
It's fucking Dragon Ball, right? It's one of the singular most important cultural exports we have.
Yeah,
people deserve a good quality version of it.
Dragon Ball Z Kai, known as just Dragon Ball Kai, or Dragon Boru Kai.
That's how the weeds
Dragon
pronounce
Ball
it.
Revised.
We're weaving Wednesdays now.
Yeah, that's
You're
just
gonna call him
in the brackets. Well. It's an anime series that is in high definition, remastered and recut version of Dragon Ball Z, done for its 20th anniversary. And like, in my teens, I think I was watching Dragon Ball Z Kai, so the fact that that was the 20th anniversary already of Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball's fucking old, man.
And that's of Dragon Ball Z, where they did the time skip, the first time skip in Dragon Ball. Because in Japan, again, it's just Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
It's Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball. But there was a time skip.
I didn't know that Dragon Ball was a thing for years. I just thought Dragon Ball was Dragon Ball Z. Because that's the version, like, presumably you watched it on like Toonami or something, right?
Yeah.
I just thought that was the show. When I found out years later, there's like a flash. It started with this series like where Goku was like a little kid.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't really on Toonami show Dragon Ball. But then I later tracked down Dragon Ball and watched that and was like, oh, this is legitimately cool. And they have multiple time skips during Dragon Ball where just there is a time skip where it becomes like more teen Goku rather than kid Goku. And then Teen Goku does like a couple of tournaments against like Tien and King Piccolo. And then you have another time skip where it becomes Dragon Ball Z and Goku's got a kid. And suddenly is an alien now. And that's the thing is, Goku wasn't even an alien for the first, what, hundreds of episodes of Dragon Ball, or however many episodes Dragon Ball was.
Yeah, I think like it's just he fell on his head, right, and didn't remember.
Well, that's the
Been a while since I
retcon that
rewatched
they
Dragon Ball.
give. Is just he was an orphan that was found by a guy and turned into an ape, but it was never explained. It was obviously very inspired by
It's Sun Wukong,
Journey to the
right?
West. Journey to the
Yeah.
West is the name of the thing I'm thinking of, right? Yeah. And then later became like Dragon Ball Z. Just changed it to fuck it. It's sci-fi now.
He's an alien.
Yeah, just
That
I can't imagine
alien.
the actual shock of people that watched all the way through Dragon Ball, got to Raditz and was like, "Wait, hang on, what? Goku's an alien?"
And
But
that's
that
the
was
thing
how
for
we were
us,
just
because
introduced to it, right? That's how we
yeah, for us
started.
that was like the first like 6 episodes, right? Like, yeah, okay, it's got aliens and space travel and ship. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
We were on board with the second one for us, and that's again like interesting, right? We had a completely different experience and exposure to something that people in Japan had had for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But for us, it was brand new.
But yeah, and it says that Dragon Ball Z Kai, or Dragon Ball Kai, premiered on Fuji TV on April 5th, 2009, at 9 a.m. just before the GO One Piece, and ended initially on March 27th, 2011, with 97 episodes, and the 98th episode was later straight to video. The two shows together were marketed as Dream 9, which refers to the hour in which they both aired. Which, to be fair, if you're sitting there and going, you want to sit down for 1 hour and watch One Piece and Dragon Ball back to back? It's like,
You'd be like, fuck yeah.
yeah, sign me the fuck up.
That's the anime equivalent of when you find out like Jurassic Park and a bunch of other movies came out in the same month, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's like you find out, I think it was like Shawshank Redemption, Jurassic Park, and like Die Hard or something all came out. I'm gonna double check what it was because there's like
Yeah,
one
there's
month in
defo 3
Hollywood.
films that were like, holy fuck. They came out at the same time, and it then returned to Japanese TV on April 6th, 2014, with the Majin Buu saga, and it ended its run for the second and last time on June 28th, 2015, with 61 episodes, where the original uncut international version would have to go on with 9 episodes. Total episode count to the series for 159 for Japanese, or 167 for the extended international broadcast. And yeah, that was a weird feeling when I guess maybe, maybe Dragon Ball Z Abridged just pulled like the most meta of jokes of us, where it got to the end of the Cell Saga and was like, we're done.
I think, yeah, because that's the we've not touched on Abridged, which I guess we should, because we've talked about like condensing a piece of media down to a shortened, truncated version. And we meant like, and that's what Abridged is, and it is a fairly unique. Like the format's not unique. Like people have done abridged versions of other shows, but it's unique in the sense that Dragon Ball has an official abridged version and an unofficial abridged version.
Yes, yeah, like Dragon
That is
Ball Z
interesting.
Kai is an actual cut down edited version, whereas Dragon Ball Z Abridged is like the fan made YouTube version that we've probably all watched if you're listening to this.
I think as well they also did like they did a meta joke of Dragon Ball abridged Kai, where they did abridge and it's 1 minute long episodes.
Yeah, I think they did like
Those.
2 of those, whereas like Dragon Ball Kai, and it was just, here's the Saiyan saga told in 1 minute. And it's like, yeah, God. Great joke.
Yeah, and I've looked up just a couple of those like stacked movie months, just the equivalent of like One Piece and Dragon Ball airing like back to back for an entire like month straight.
Of course.
And we have a couple of years here where, for example, in 1984 in June, Gremlins, The Karate Kid, Conan, and Ghostbusters came out in the same month.
Wow.
In 2001, you had Ocean's 11, Not Another Teen Movie, Vanilla Sky, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, and Black Hawk Down in December.
God.
Pretty stacked month. 1982 in June, you had Poltergeist, Star Trek 2, E.T., Grease 2, Blade Runner, and Thing. Of The Thing.
And that's the thing, at the time, I'm sure not all of these movies did super well. Like, I think the Thing is like probably one that
Oh,
didn't do great and
did
was a cult
terrible at the
classic.
box office.
But yeah, like man, looking back and seeing how great those movies are, it's ridiculous.
Yes, but I just thought it'd be interesting because like that is when you look back on moments like that, right? Of what was it now? Like, can you think of anything equivalent? Because I remember like when we were younger, before school, they weren't airing or premiering, but I remember before school, like on Channel 4 at 8 a.m., you'd always have like Frasier, followed by like Everybody Loves Raymond. And I always thought that was like a pretty good back-to-back airing of shows. Or in the UK at 6 p.m., do you remember you'd have like Friends followed by The Simpsons on Channel 4 after school?
I
Remember that?
I can't remember because I remember like watching a thing where it's like Community aired at the same time as like a couple of other like classic sitcoms and stuff. It was like all at the same time. It was like Community, 30 Rock, Parks and Rec, and The Office or something like that. That were all airing back to back. I can't
Like
100%
NBC's lineup or something had them all in a
remember.
row.
It was like there was 4 shows and one of them was Community. I remember watching in
Okay.
like somebody's YouTube video of like, holy fuck, like these 2 hours of TV every like Thursday on NBC or something, as you say, was just back to back to back bangers.
Yeah, it's like that's American TV, but I think the British equivalent I can think of is where just Simpsons and Friends would air in the 90s because they were premieres as well.
Yeah.
They were like new episode of Simpsons, new episode of Friends, back to back on Channel 4 at like 6 p.m. I think.
Yeah. And it makes me think video game wise, where you look at certain years where it's like, oh cool, like the last couple of months of like 2007 was like, oh, do you want
We had
like
like
Call of Duty 4, Halo 3, Rock Band, probably several other games like Bioshock and stuff, and you're like, as if we got all those games within like 2-3 months of one another.
it's just like it's the Sabrina the Teenage Witch meme, right? Of where she's got like the 4 like pies in front of her trying to eat them all. It's like I've got too much. It's what there are just times in history though where in terms of the media people they were eating fucking good.
Mhm.
And they didn't even know it at the time, right? Do you think they knew it at the time? Do you think kids in Japan in that year knew that they were eating so good that they were getting like brand new, super
think
high quality Dragon Ball and
the-
like One Piece back to back before school every morning?
There's definitely evidence that people knew what was going on with the fact that the big 3 exists, right? And if people aren't aware, and people often get confused, the big 3 was like the referring to a very specific moment in time where the big 3 Shonen Jump animes or mangas, I can't remember exactly which one, maybe both, were Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach. And it's not to say that they're the biggest 3 or biggest, most
Yeah.
important, best animes
I remember
ever.
this conversation went around, right? A load of people were like, well, where's Dragon Ball? It's like, but
Like Dragon
Dragon
Ball's
Ball's
like
important.
the father of the big 3, and then the big 3 follow Dragon Ball, and it's like Dragon Ball's like the on the pedestal, and then just below them in the podium positions. If you think of it that way, kind of like the generation below, almost in the
Yeah.
family tree. Maybe as a better analogy, it just got One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, and then they, spawn off another entire family tree themselves of what you could call a modern big 3, where One Piece might still be included, but Naruto and Bleach aren't really there anymore, and like that's because they're not really releasing new episodes. No, there was some new Bleach, but like there's Boruto, or Boruto might be done by now.
I will never get over the fact it's called Boruto.
Yeah,
It's so fucking dumb. I love it.
and yeah, the big 3 very much refers to just at the time people were like acknowledging, hey, these 3 animes are fucking huge and notable. So I do think there is an element where people were kind of appreciative of what was there at the time it was coming out.
Yeah. Well, I imagine they would be, right? So it's nice to think they were appreciating their time. You often hear about stuff like oh god, I'm trying to think, it was a television show. It's not The Wire, because The Wire was appreciated, in its time, but it's only after it finished that people really start going, man, the fucking Wire is good. Maybe a better example would
Yeah.
be Arrested Development, right? Where Arrested Development got award after award after award, but never got any good viewing numbers to the point where like David Cross went on stage accepting an award and was like, well, thanks for giving us an award. Maybe you can go fucking watch it.
Yeah, yeah, and similar
And that's
to
always sad to hear, right? Where something's of really good quality and just it doesn't get recognition until after it's done. Like we
yeah,
mentioned The Thing, John
and
Carpenter's The Thing,
I was gonna say we
bombed at the
mentioned
box
multiple
office.
things where it's like The Thing is another cult classic, and wasn't appreciated in its time, and even like I mentioned Community, like Community got cancelled nearly season after season, and then people kept bringing it back because the fan reaction was, "Oh no, this thing is great, we love it," and there was a small passionate fan base. But every time they re-released it, it's like, "Oh, but it's a very small passionate fan base, isn't it?" And just even now, there's meant to be a movie in the works that we still haven't heard much about, but just yeah, it's one of those weird things of just because something is great doesn't mean it necessarily has broad appeal.
Yeah, in regards to The Thing, one of my favourite quotes from John Carpenter, I think it's like an interview with like Guillermo del Toro, where Guillermo del Toro sits down and because well, The Thing when it came out wasn't really appreciating its time, and John Carpenter's like, well, thanks for bringing that up. And then Guillermo del Toro's like, yeah, but you do know you inspired an entire generation of filmmakers like myself, right? And just John Carpenter looks at him and goes, how the fuck does that help me?
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, he's right, right? It's like, how the fuck does that help me? It nearly killed my career.
Yeah. And some people may see kind of resurgences in a career as they get appreciated over time, but that's not really how things work. I can't think of many notable examples where that's actually happened, where somebody's career's tanked, unfortunately, because they weren't appreciated in the time, and then they managed to come back.
I think the closest you get that I can think off the top of my head is an actor like Brendan Fraser, where Brendan Fraser kind of like faded away for a little bit due to a multitude of reasons, too depressing and dark to get into now. But when he like came back to do like The Whale, and he started getting like Oscar buzz, that started the conversation of like, man, Brendan Fraser, all of his movies were great, and he was a really nice guy. And he got like that huge standing ovation at the Oscars, right? Of just everyone in Hollywood just clapping hands like, fuck it, he's Brendan Fraser, he's back. And he was crying at the Oscars because he didn't realise how much he was appreciated.
That's maybe true. Brendan Fraser had a good career.
Yeah.
He was popular in the 90s, early noughties. It's not as if, he was slated during those times and had to walk away because of that or anything.
He did have like a pretty bad downturn though in his success. Again, for reasons that are interesting to get into. So
I think maybe like
that's kind of a silver lining to that.
A slightly, maybe like more wholesome story nowadays is like Keiki Kwan, right? Or just like,
oh yeah,
they quit Hollywood because they didn't see any aspirational Asian roles in the industry, and
like, fuck this.
Just said, yeah, fuck it, and then like I don't know if their return to movies was what's the movie now?
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That's the one. Thank you.
Inspired them to come back.
But
that's not the big role that got them back. Yeah,
that was their big role that got them noticed back. At least if that wasn't their first movie back, it was the one that got them noticed again.
It was the first big role back, and it was Crazy Rich Asians that got them inspired them to pursue acting again. A primarily Asian-led movie.
And an Asian-led movie that got a lot of recognition as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it never stopped pissing me off that when he got like I think he got an Oscar for it, or Oscar buzz, and he goes on stage and everyone's clapping for him, and it's like, half the people clapping there are the producers and directors who didn't cast Asian people for 20 straight fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're clapping of like, oh, it's such a motivational story. It's like, well, you want that to be if you fucking cast people who look like you.
No, Karl, they were crafting a story, okay? They're not just storytellers within the movies they make, also within the lives that they ruin along the way.
That's what that always like left a sour taste in my mouth about like Keiki Kwan, because when he talks about like, yeah, just there were no roles for guys who look like me, and then all the producers like, what a great story. Look, he came back. And they act as if like he was fighting some nebulous force
Yeah,
of the industry that no one controlled.
not that he quit because of them.
Yeah,
Like, they were
but
the reason that he quit the industry for 20 odd years.
but the way they're acting is if there's like just a sort of fucking like dragon or something that like just ate roles, and not like a just concerted like system of racism that prevented him and people like him from just getting leading roles.
But Carl, there's a lot, so I might not necessarily get through it all. But should we do a couple of pieces of trivia on Dragon Ball Z Kai before
Well,
we
you just
finish
truncate
up?
it. You're doing an entry on Kai. You can just skip
Exactly.
lines, right?
Um,
Skip everything that's not important.
so one of the longest ones here talks about gore. So it is one of the longer like paragraphs in the trivia section, but I want to know what gore was changed.
There was a few that was like blood. There's a lot of blood in Dragon Ball that's got cut out because Dragon Ball is quite a violent series.
And was a lot
they-
less violent in the like Western adaptations.
Yes,
Whereas
because they wanted to aim it at a younger audience.
yeah,
than teen.
because obviously, especially during the 90s, right, is when Dragon Ball was airing over here, at least in the UK, it was the 90s and it was more marketed as like, oh, hey, it's another cartoon. It was on Cartoon Network. Like,
we just talked about Hollywood racism, right? Of just Hollywood being like looking at it, well, it's a cartoon, it's for kids.
whereas anime over in Japan and maybe over in the East in general is just seen as, hey, it's for everyone and it can be for adults, whereas there's just a weird kind of framing over here where if it's animated, it's more for kids, right?
Yeah.
Still to this day, less of a stigma now, but definitely more so in the night.
Yeah. And as a result, we've got this really popular cartoon from Japan called Dragon Ball, but it's got some violence in it. Just edit that shit out. And I would argue that the violence isn't that important, save for the fact that people fucking die, and it's really hard to edit around that.
Yeah, like when Krillin is riding on Frieza's horn, it's hard to not depict that in a violent way, where Frieza is like bopping Krillin's corpse on top of his head to get extra bonus points.
Yeah, admittedly though, they do have the inbuilt thing in Dragon Ball to get around that, because one of the things you can't really depict in children's entertainment is death. But no one in Dragon Ball dies. They go to the afterlife and they're shown as being okay as a spirit.
Yeah, they are, especially the main characters. They're not even the little like spirit fire things. They're just in their corporeal forms in the afterlife.
Yeah, so they could probably get around it that of like, oh, Krillin died, but he's not quote unquote dead.
That's
like,
fine. He's just training with King Kai. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Sort of like in regards to like Yu-Gi-Oh, right, where the Shadow Realm is just not a thing in the manga. They invented it so that,
like, instead of dying, you go to the Shadow Realm, which is just the same thing, but yeah, it's a place for you to go rather than just I murdered this dude.
Which would mean it would be impossible to, air at the time slot they wanted it to air at. But what do they change? I imagine it's stuff like Frieza's tail being cut off, Piccolo's arm being cut off.
It says that some, but not all, of the more gory moments have been edited to a degree that even in the Japanese version of Dragon Ball Kai, for example, when Piccolo fires his special beam cannon at Raditz and Goku, he creates a hole through both of them, and a heavy amount of blood is shown in Dragon Ball Z, while no blood is seen at all in Kai, and the hole that Piccolo creates in the centers of the bodies are replaced with burn marks. So very similar to the censorship that already happened to our versions.
And I've got no issue with that. So it's not. Does it kill him? Yeah. Also, it makes ki blast seem way more fucking terrifying. That it's energy that passed through their heart and killed them without leaving any physical damage.
Yeah, of course. And like, there's just a shadowy hole alluded to rather than just showing a hole through their body, right? It's fine.
I think that's really scary, but it doesn't fit with the established lore of how ki works, right? Because ki seems to be concussive in Dragon Ball.
And it does say as well that, like, other moments like that where, like, Krillin blasts a hole through Vegeta, for example, is very similar, but other edits include all middle finger gestures, as well as toning down the most of the epileptic flash effects, which Yeah, maybe that should have
It
just
happened.
not been there in the first place. Fair play.
Pokemon taught on that one.
And nudity is notably edited as well, such as in the first episode of Kai, where baby Goku is shown. His genitals are covered up by making objects that he is sitting on appear to be covering his genitals. Again, maybe not having like naked babies is a good shout.
Yeah, it's also I think that's just way more in keeping with the tone and humor of Dragon Ball,
Hmm.
of just having something always comically covering his little genitals, like his little Goku peen.
Yeah, and it's like as
It's funny,
well.
right? It sets up jokes.
Yeah, like using his tail to cover his genitals when he's shrinking from his great ape state to his normal self as well. They managed to change that, and then it does say that most of these edits were made quite possibly because Japan's television broadcasting laws had become stricter since Dragon Ball Z was first aired. So it may have been due to Kai airing at 9 a.m. instead of the prime time like DBZ did in Japan. And I like the idea that it's like it's not because kids are watching this at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's just the government changed the laws.
Not to mention, it's indicative of just changing sensibilities, right? It shows how long Dragon Ball been on the fucking air, right?
Yeah.
And how popular it become. Of like, you can see by that timeline that Dragon Ball was originally intended for an older audience, but that older audience had grown up. Some who had children who then introduced Dragon Ball 2, and as a result, they began to soften its tone because it had become a cultural phenomenon by that point.
Yeah, and it's very funny that just oh well, we had these, but now it's like 20 years later. Maybe we should just censor this a little bit because there are some
Yeah.
kids watching.
It's also as well, none of the changes really, I don't think any of those changes at least, maybe there's some other ones that are a bit more consequential, but none of those to me fundamentally change anything about the show.
Not really, Like at the end of the day, you still see people getting attacked and dying. It doesn't really change anything. Like
It's a martial arts anime, right? It's not like some of like the translations, which just straight up change the character of like Goku, for example.
the Goku's a bit more serious in the Japanese version, right?
Yeah, like they try to play him as like a superhero in the Western version, whereas in the Japanese version, he just wants to fight.
Yeah.
That's all he really cares about. That and his family, of course.
But it does say that parts 1 to 4 of the DVD and Blu-ray releases by Funimation are now out of print, and maybe this is where I was getting confused with the mention of the soundtrack earlier, as the music on them was composed by Kenji Yamamoto, who was fired at near the end of Kai's run due to the rampant plagiarism within his portfolio, which caused reruns, later episodes, and the season sets to switch over to the original Dragon Ball Z soundtrack by Shunsuke Kikuchi, and parts 6 to 8 have also gone out of print because all of these releases were replaced by the new season sets containing 2 artwork.
Do you know what? I'm glad that these massive fucking companies also have to deal with bullshit music copyright issues because it's right annoying on YouTube, right? How do you like it?
And it does say, however, the UK release of the season sets still have Yamamoto score. It's like they haven't fully gone out there, but yes, I will leave it there with like the trivia because there's still a few more bits, but those are a couple and like seem notable and stood out to me of just like censorship and copyright, just two things that we ourselves have to deal with every day.
Yeah, and it's out of curiosity, let's have a look. And to be fair, do you know the joke about like anime costing quite a bit? Dragon Ball Kai, like each season's like 15 quid on Blu-ray.
But again,
That's the most reasonable I've seen. That's the most reasonable price I've seen for anime.
Yeah, every single version though
like...
does have problems.
Yeah.
Like there is no definitive version that you should definitely buy.
That's what Eric talks about when I had a conversation with him about it. Of like, it's just frustrating that something so iconic, so important to culture as Dragon Ball, there's not a definitive version out there that really gets across the original artistic vision of Toriyama. Like, even just like the color grading, for example, is like different.
Yeah. And like it's most notable where they had to change the first few episodes of Dragon Ball Z because like Vegeta had red hair and stuff.
Oh, I like that though. I like Vegeta with the green armor, right?
With the green armor and the red hair and weird shit like that. And it's just, I do remember that being one thing that I noticed. It's just, it seems really weird. Like, Vegeta just changes appearance over one episode, and that's one. Like, the voices I didn't notice as much as a kid, but I definitely noticed that.
The thing I like is Blue Popo.
Oh, Blue Popo, yeah, to get like censorship around the like weird racism of Mr.
Yeah,
Popo as a character. Like in the UK releases, Mr. Popo was just bright blue. Instead, it was similar to like how Jinx got changed from having black skin to having like purpley skin.
yeah. I would like to just sit someone down like, why are you so obsessed with this character design? Surely by this point you know it's problematic. Just don't put it in.
But Dragon Ball was released in like the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Was it as problematic, especially in Japan, then to have like a minstrel
And
looking
you know what?
character?
We're not.
I'm not sure, but it's not a good look modern days either way.
It's just all I do. It's one of the things you look at it and you just go, oh.
Yeah.
And someone's asking, did any games make the weird colour Vegeta a costume? Yeah, in Fighter Z. If you play base Vegeta, one of his costumes is green Vegeta, and they put like a red tint on his hair.
Okay.
It is. Yeah, that's no definitive edition, but I do want to see like EastEnders Kai now. Grey's Anatomy Kai. Let's fucking go.
I watched again a TikTok clip today made me go watch a random episode of a show that I think both of us might like, but might be a bit frustrating to watch, which is The Good Wife.
Might describe it for me.
It appears to be just like an American show that had like 9 seasons about a woman, like, you know, it revolves around this like female protagonist who's just a lawyer and all the lawyer shenanigans she has to deal with, and it was just a clip came up where Matthew Lillard was in an episode. I was like, I'm gonna go watch that one episode of this thing, and again it was about copyright. I was like, maybe we both would actually enjoy this.
You know what? I'll add it to my list. I'm not familiar with it, but a 9-season procedural.
A procedural courtroom drama starring a single female lawyer.
Let's fucking go. Let's see what She-Hulk could have been. Let's go.
But yeah, speaking of just random clips I saw on TikTok, that was one where I was like, no, I'm actually going to watch the full episode rather than just an abridged version.
Would you recommend it? Would you recommend Single Female Lawyer the show?
Did find the pacing and the cut very weird.
But that makes it interesting, right?
Like, no, it was just bad. As in, like, it was just seemingly, like, the resolutions of the episode of the court case was like, yeah, excellent. I think we've won.
Done.
And, like, then it just cuts to another character that I'm not familiar with, obviously, because I was watching out of context of just, something about, like, frauding in a vote or something with another character. But the actual, like, court case got resolved. And I went to the next episode, and that there was just a, new court case for the week. And I was like, as if just the end to the court case was, I think we're going to win.
To be fair, if your lawyer says that, you pretty much got it.
And I was like, just the other team go, I need to have a word and walk out, and then that's the resolution. I was like, I think this might be a good show. It was interesting, but there's just certain moments where I was like, what are they doing?
You know what? I bet that'd be really fun to watch. Do you know, like when I talk about police procedurals and just note every time they commit a crime or violate someone's rights?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how many times The Good Wife does that in regards to court procedure. Because the amount of movies and TV shows that just don't understand how the fucking court system works.
Including She-Hulk and Daredevil, right?
Like, spoilers, you can't introduce new evidence midway through a fucking trial.
Oh, yeah. Surprise evidence and surprise witnesses, like, have to be a very choreographed dance. It can't just be like, bam, I didn't submit my evidence beforehand.
It's like, okay, immediately the entire case gets thrown out.
Or delayed, based on, acceptance of new evidence, maybe. But, again, we're not lawyers. But it definitely doesn't work of just like, I brought up new shit that no one was able to research.
The best one is, I forget which, I think it's a movie, where, like, the big triumphant scene is where the good lawyer gets the bad guy's lawyer to admit that his client is guilty. And I saw like a breakdown from a lawyer of like, well, one, immediate fucking dismissal. Because if your lawyer went on the stand and went, he fucking did it, Your Honor, get him. You're entitled to a fair defense, and that's not a fair defense. But also, the guy who did that is a fucking like mobster. So that lawyer's dead. That lawyer is going to be shot in the back of the head before he even makes it to his car. Because that's just not a thing that you do. But it's like the idea of like, where did Hollywood get the idea that just lawyers can go, he did it, Your Honor, it's him, get him.
And I did just put someone for like making a joke about skis on women. Please don't do that. But yes.
No,
anyway,
we're reasonable. Why would you skis on them?
Yeah,
they're far less likely to pay attention to you if you skis on them.
We don't appreciate comments on that, and yeah, little slap on the wrist, a little timeout for you. But we will be back in a few minutes. I just need to take a quick break, grab another drink, and
no problem.
Toilet, but yeah.
Yes, so everyone enjoy just gazing into the eyes of Leo.
Gazing. Those goofy eyes of Leo. We're back.
Yes, and Lucas, have you got anything to plug for housekeeping? Because it's your turn to lead into my entry for this week.
It is indeed. I'll just do the usual. My Twitch.tv Legend of Kanto. Few exciting things to be streaming soon. Of like, going to be streaming the end of Super Mario RPG, which will then be leading into like me streaming a couple of games that I've committed to are Zelda 2. So Adventure of Link on the NES through Nintendo Switch Online. I'm going to be playing that without any like rewind functions or save states or anything. I'm going to be playing that like without any help until chat decide that that's not fun anymore. If people decide like, hey, this is not a good experience because that game's shit, we can change that. But that's the plan. Similar to doing a Zelda CDI stream, where I'm going to commit to like making fun of that game and making it a longer stream where I just have a drink, and if we all give up, we're just going to watch the game to conclusion on YouTube instead because they're god awful.
Let me know when you're doing that one. I'll join in for that.
Yeah, we can make a little day out of that one. I figure that's going to just be like a one-off stream where like, you know, I make sure I've got a day off, have a bit of a drink and have some fun with that, and then also playing.
I'll try and get to your house for that one. If we can, we could figure out in person for it.
That we figure out in person. Yeah, that can be a silly little fun time. But I'll also be playing the Paper Mario 1000 Year Door remake soon, and also just as I mentioned in the intro, I ordered a Switch 2 because I'm an idiot, and I'll be streaming some Mario Kart World and some other Nintendo Switch 2 stuff when I get that.
So you know, keep your eyes peeled for that one. You're gonna be streaming a lot to pay for that one.
Yeah. You know, asking for people's support on Patreon. But either way, go check that out. Follow me on Twitch, and also follow me on Blue Sky. I've started using that a little bit more, and I've changed the like defaults on YouTube to like keep my link in the description default there rather than my Twitter now. So I've remembered to do that, and just I've been using Blue Sky a little bit more now. So like, actually go give me a follow over there, I guess. You want to keep up with my shenanigans. But anything from your end?
Should I get a Blue Sky? Would you recommend it?
I feel obligated to have one social media platform that I use still, right?
So I don't use any of them anymore because like Twitter shit the bed, and when it did, and I just decided I'm not going to post them anymore, I felt so free.
That's
I enjoy continuing to feel free.
I felt free, which is why I'm using Blue Sky a lot less than I use Twitter. But I feel like as an online content creator, I should have somewhere where someone can follow me.
That's the thing. I've got like every now and again I'll think, oh, that's a funny joke, or I had a funny observation, and there's nowhere to post it. But I think that means I don't have to think about it anymore. And it's like,
yeah, that's the thing is you've been doing this shit for like 10 years longer than I have, so
yeah,
I can understand where you're coming from. Of the I feel free for finally.
But getting out of that mindset as well of like everything is content, it's very difficult to unlearn that behavior of like, oh, this is fun. I need to tweet it. I need to take a photo of it.
You literally just displayed that right there and then of, oh, well, I'll come and visit you and we'll make that content together. Like,
Well, you're gonna make
We,
content out of it anyway.
well, no, yes, but like we still both have that mindset, and like at some point, I think we both came to a conclusion where just we didn't really say anything to each other, but both of us at relatively similar times stopped every time we were together going, let's cram all of our time together as friends making content together.
Yeah. We also like stop drinking in content as well because we're like, okay, it's fun when you're in your 20s, but when you're in your 30s drinking all your videos, it's a cry for help.
Which again is why I'd like to be like, hey, let's make one day out of me having a drink and playing Zelda CDI rather than, oh, every week we're gonna get drunk and record some more Fat Fiend videos, right?
No, you've convinced me. I'm not gonna get Blue Sky.
Fair. And I
And if I ever
100%
did, it'd
support.
probably just be reposting all of my like Twitter bangers.
Yeah, I support
Which
that
there are many.
decision because, you know, unlike a lot of people, I do my best to make sure I take days off, and when I am off work, I try to make sure that I'm not looking at our Discord, looking at social media, stuff like that, whereas
Can confirm.
a lot of people don't necessarily do that in our field, and I think it's very
I don't know. I'm like
healthy
on
to at
24/7.
least give myself that of like, if it's a day off, stop looking at your phone unless you're playing Balatro.
I am particularly bad for that because my job for 15 years now has been content creator. So just when I'm not quote unquote on, getting back into the swing of even just writing or researching is very difficult.
And
It requires
also,
such a specific mindset.
you know, mentioning like game of last year Balatro, if you do want a way to look at your phone and feel like you're doing that thing but not being on social media, just go buy Balatro, because I can guarantee for most people you won't even want to be looking at anything else while you're playing that game.
There we go. That's why I was listening to so much music. But yeah, okay, you convinced me, Lucas. No, no Blue Skies. I've got nothing to plug besides my Twitch, where I might stream Metal Gear Rising Revengeance this weekend.
Well, Carl, you've got one thing to plug. That's some
What's that?
thick, thick thighs.
That is indeed, yes. So we mentioned just before, like the break of don't be a skis on women. You can appreciate the female form without being a fucking weirdo about it.
You can.
And the trailer for Emma Frost is obviously what's inspired my entry of the Wiki Weekdays podcast today. And I saw that and went, man, that's a fucking stonking design. That design is so good. The voice acting on Emma Frost is fantastic. She says the line, like, to me, my X-Men. Great. It's the Hellfire Gala, one of my favorite like runs in comics every time they do it. Every comment is like, step on me, mommy. And it's like, just don't be fucking weird about it.
There's a way to look at that and go like, oh, that's sick.
That's a good design.
And they've gone to like, trust me, if you haven't watched the trailer, they've gone to like some Chun-Li levels with that character design.
Yes.
But there's a way to look at it and go, that's cool. Also, the fact that the Hellfire Gala, as you mentioned, is one of the coolest thing in comics, and that might be the influence for like the costumes in the new season of Marvel Rivals. Sign me the fuck up, because it's just Fashion Week in Marvel.
Yes. And just, I thought, well, let's talk about Emma Frost. I was tempted to talk about her in a video, because when we do a weekend video, we put clips in. But then I realized, well, Emma Frost hasn't actually been in all that many things. Like she's in the live action like movies with like Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy for a little bit,
She's in First Class, and that's it, I think.
and then she's in like the cartoons, and then she makes like sporadic appearances in other shows. But she's never been like a main character. So let's talk about on the Wiki Weekdays podcast. So we can just talk about the character in general, because I'm not too familiar with Emma Frost, besides the fact she's one of the most powerful telepaths in all of Marvel.
No, and
Like, she don't give a fuck.
I will say, you know I keep putting Marvel Rivals characters as like the thumbnails for these things, even if we're not necessarily talking about Marvel Rivals the game too much. They've just given me like an actual widescreen, high res, nice looking version of these characters to use, right? It's just it's quite difficult to find high res scans of comics, and also ones that fit well for thumbnails, and ones that are widescreen, like normally comics are more portrait. So just,
Yes.
I appreciate we're not always talking about the Marvel Rivals versions in the game, but they just give me really nice artwork to use. thumbnails. I do apologize.
Not to mention, it's very good art, like you said, and it entices people to click, right? Because it's a really good design. Because Emma Frost has always had a great design.
Yeah.
I've always loved like her design, especially like in a diamond form.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's some really good artwork out there. Because like the level of quality of the artwork varies wildly, but there's some really good artwork out there from like good artists who are able to draw her diamond form as translucent.
I am hoping that the diamond form is quite prevalent in Marvel Rivals because it's already quite difficult to, at a glance, tell the difference between Dagger
Blonde,
and Susan Storm.
just blonde white ladies. Let's go.
Like blonde ladies in white outfits at a distance that look quite similar. If we get a third one of them and it's hard to tell between all three of them, the game starts becoming just less readable from a gameplay perspective. And I'm like, please give me something to, like, maybe the thighs are just there to differentiate the character silhouettes.
Yeah, it's interesting that Marvel Rivals, trying to pay homage to the original comics for all the base costumes, has inadvertently shown just how limited the designs for female characters were in comics.
Yeah.
And thus creating a legitimate argument, as you mentioned, for like, gameplay readability, to alter those designs.
Because there's only so many times you can get skinny white blonde woman in white outfit before I can't tell what character I'm looking at and attacking.
Yeah, and just as you said, like they gave Emma Frost like the title to this, like Thick Thighs Save Lives. Of she's a vanguard, and we're going to delve a little bit into character design for video games here. And a vanguard character in Marvel Rivals is the tank, the character who's supposed to take damage. They're supposed to be like either right at the front of the fight, taking all the damage, or providing a support role towards the back, depending on how their kit works. But those character designs, by necessity, need to be big. They need to be immediately readable by your opponent and your teammates. But
Generally
how do you make
speaking, you need a tank to be bigger and a support character to be smaller and the DPS to be in the middle, like generally size-wise.
And sometimes you can get you get variations on that. But that's usually how it works. And yeah, they just okay. We're going to give just Emma Frost as the most stacked ass you've ever seen because she just needs to have a bigger character model. Well, she does, right?
That's one way to say it. Yeah, sure.
She needs to have a big character model.
Yeah,
and they couldn't. And unfortunately, with Marvel, they haven't got like their version like Zarya, right? Or there's presumably a character who has that body type somewhere in like their canon, but not a popular enough one to be like, oh, holy shit, it's this character. So just fuck it, just make her super stack, make her really tall. Because I did have a quick glance at Emma Frost's like information on the Marvel Wiki, and she is quite tall for a woman. And she also put in the high heels, then give a diamond form or like the sparkly additions. Like she hopefully will stand out more so than, as you mentioned, Dagger and Susan Storm.
Yeah.
So how familiar are you with Emma Frost as a character?
Again, like they haven't appeared in that much media that I've seen, and like not that much. Admittedly, I'm a casual comic book fan, right?
Okay.
Like, just I don't particularly know too much about them other than their appearance in First Class, and like I know that they're a very like strong telepath, but
one of the strongest, yes.
Yeah, I don't know like an overly lot about the character.
Well, let's find out then. So, Emma Frost is a powerful and influential mutant telepath, most notoriously known as the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, and occasionally the headmistress of the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. And her quotes reflects that, because her quotes, like her battle cry, that is like at the top of the page, is simply "one more time then for the children." So where she personally steps out onto the battlefield to protect the children of the Xavier Institute. And it's like, you fucked up when the invincible diamond lady strolls out in fucking high heels and just starts mind blasting the shit out of you, right?
Yeah, so like, are they actually made out of diamonds? That's one thing
We'll find out,
I'm
won't we? So,
curious about, yeah.
Yeah, born to a rich Boston mercantile family, she parted ways with her family and built a financial empire of her own with Frost International.
Okay, so is that her company?
That's her company,
Okay, yeah.
Frost
So it's
International.
not like she's like a nepo baby or anything. That's just her company.
Yeah, as an adversary of Charles Xavier's X-Men, Frost constantly used to clash with younger mutants and attempts to manipulate them, such as Kitty Pryde and members of the New Mutants. However, the tragic death of her Hellions changed her heart, leading her to form a partnership with Xavier, putting her love for teaching to a good use. But never afraid to cross the line of morality, she became the co-headmistress of Xavier's school. As a survivor of the Genosian genocide, due to her new ability to transform into a nigh indestructible, organic diamond like form, she became an inestimable member of the X Men and has grown into a leader of the mutant community in general. And then here's the thing you're interested in, Lucas. As a member of the Quiet Council of the mutant nation of Krakoa, Frost remained a prominent figure in the thriving mutant society, influencing economic, cultural, and diplomatic affairs between mutants and humans. She rebranded the Hellfire Trading Company as a high-level transaction business and became the host of the annual Hellfire Gala. So she's the host. That's why she's the...
I wasn't sure whether like her being the host was just a Marvel Rivals thing or whether that was a comic book thing that they'd taken inspiration from. But yeah, the fact that just I ultimately now have to love Emma Frost regardless of what you say about her because she formed the Hellfire Gala, Karl. It's like the coolest shit.
Indeed it is, yes. And we have some basic biographical information here, Lucas. So her name, Emma Grace Frost. Her code names, the Phoenix, the White Queen. Her titles and ranks include the Black King and the Black Queen. Her nicknames are Emmy and M. Her impersonations are Storm, and her other aliases are Hazel Kendall, the Good Witch. I like that. Because, yeah, she's got like that whole Frost thing going on. The Ice Princess, which was her Hellfire Club exotic dancer name. And I bet her performances, there was some crazy shit going on.
So she has the Hellfire Club and she made herself an exotic dancer. That's a hell of a move.
She might have started as an exotic dancer and worked her way up.
Good enough, yeah, true.
Also, as I said, I reiterate, there was probably some crazy shit going on because she got like psychic powers.
Well,
No, actually, no, I bet she did. I bet she used her psychic powers to make you think she was doing like some crazy ass routine, and she was just sat in the back room like eating pizza or something.
That's just what I was imagining then, right? Of like, yeah, technically she does have the ability to make you just think that she's exotic dancing while she's not.
Have you ever seen that like absolutely amazing clip of that stripper who goes out on stage, sits down, and starts eating a pizza? As people just throw dollar bills at her, and it's like that's a performance.
That's how to make a living.
Yeah. She just goes out on stage like in lingerie, just sits down, eats a pizza, and just guys are throwing money at her, and it's like that is how it's done.
When you see the amount of money that some of those mukbang streamers make, right?
It makes you hungry, doesn't it? For both cash, fame, and
like you get it all. You get fed, you get money, you get fame, and you just have to sit there and eat a lot of food. Like I said, don't get me wrong, I couldn't eat the amount of food that they eat.
I could,
and I couldn't. I also couldn't stay as slim as they do. It like full stop, and then also I definitely couldn't stay as slim as they do while eating that amount of food.
Yeah, some of them might just live at the gym. Like it's like the guy from like Man vs Food.
Well, there's a bunch of competitive eaters that I occasionally see on TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that, where they're just like relatively fit people, but they do like food challenges constantly for their socials, and it's like they must just live in the gym.
Yeah, being fit means you burn more calories.
Yeah,
but I think it's like the Man vs Food guy, where he's talks about like, well, what do you like between seasons? He's a pretty big dude. Like he's in decent shape for someone who eats the way he does. It's like, well, I live at the gym and I'm on a pure vegan diet.
Well,
by necessity.
He quit fairly early on, right?
Yeah,
Adam Richmond, I think it was, and like he quit after a few years, and then
he just
how bad the show was for his health, and he did lose a lot of weight, but yeah, he talked about how like just that was basically killing him, and then they took a few years off and brought another host in. I was like, great, excellent, we'll get someone else in. Did you not look at what this guy, like the famous host of your show, going, doing this show was literally killing me, and I was going to
That's
die
like
an early death. And they're like, guess what? Man versus food is bad.
normally a Faustian bargain is like metaphorical. I didn't realize you could actually trade years of your life for fame.
In that case, you can, right? But also, obviously, like being able to do what he did and being a good host, and there's a lot extra on top of just man can eat.
Yeah, it's more about his presenting style, right? Because I think like the other hosts they got to replace him just didn't have his charisma. But
Exactly,
speaking of
yeah.
charisma, Emma Frost has that in spades. We have some basic biographical information about her here, her physical characteristics. So, her gender, female. Her height is 5'10", which is tall for a woman, especially a female character introduced as like early in the comic history as she was in like the 1970s. It says here.
Oh, right,
So the
okay,
average height
yeah.
for a woman is like 5'8", I think. It would have been like 5'6" back in the 70s.
I think in the UK, like average females around 5'5", and then average males around 5'10".
Okay, so
Um,
she's as tall as a 6 foot tall man on Tinder,
yeah,
and she wears high
she
heels
is.
all the time.
And that thing is, back in the 1970s, I'm sure that was even shorter. So ostensibly a tall female is
Yeah,
that the
she
idea?
towers over in a lot of her like appearances. She generally towers over nearly everyone she talks to because she just walks around in high heels and is like, as I said, she's 6 foot tall for a man who's on Tinder. And some other information here is her weight is 144 pounds or 65 kilos in her human form. In her diamond form, she weighs 440 pounds or 200 kilos.
Also, it is quite likely that she's at very least got skin made of diamond. Then,
Yeah, we'll find out how it works when we get to the powers and abilities section. And there's one more thing to mention here, Lucas, before we move on to that. Her personal information, so her identity, no dual identity, citizenship, American/Krakoan, education. She has a qualification in sex therapy. And I know the joke everyone wants to make. Of course she does. She can teach me about sex any day.
mm-hmm.
That's actually a really important thing. And I actually hope that in the comics they treat that with some
Respect.
level of dignity. Because it is a very, very useful job because so many people have weird attitudes to sex. As we encountered on and mentioned earlier, of some people just can't see a woman without immediately degrading them or viewing them as an object of sexual desire. And they
Yeah,
seemingly can't see the difference between an earnest compliment on their appearance and reducing them to that.
yeah, and like I just I can't really think of like how that would be a bad thing, but obviously people twist it to be, oh well, woman talking about sex, like, and I don't need to get into the weirdo thought implications that people will get into there, but sure, a
Yes.
lot of people listening can like, extrapolate the thought from there. But yeah, it's weird of like, oh, so you mean this thing that could naturally help like basically everybody, like everybody that wants to have sexual relationships wants to have a better sexual relationship than not.
I think who doesn't want to have better sex? And it reminds me a little bit of Gillian Anderson. There's a book she didn't write it, but she wrote the foreword and helped compile it, and it's called Want. I'd recommend it. A friend of mine was reading it, and I read a few passages from it. It's very eye-opening, and it is a collection of various sexual fantasies submitted anonymously by women, along with commentary from experts and Gillian Anderson about why it's normal to think this way and how popular and common that particular fantasy is.
Yeah, and
And it's one of those things of just normalizing, letting people like, hey, if you just talk, the one way you're not going to experience this thing that is clearly very important to you and is something you really, 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 really want is by not talking about it. So let's normalize it.
yeah, and that's the thing is like not here to you know shame people that are asexual in any way or anything like that. And
Of course
there
not
are,
now.
of course, people that aren't interested, but there is a reason why like Kama Sutra is one of the best selling books worldwide, and there is a reason why there are so many people that are like, sexual therapists and couples therapists and marriage counselors and stuff to maybe try and help not necessarily break down the act in terms of like a marriage counselor, but at least maybe the communication in talking about sex and stuff. And then I think
Yeah.
there's just
Remove the
a
stigma, makes it way easier to do, right?
yeah, there's just a weird stigma around sex and sex work and sexual acts. Just like it feels really weird to have in this modern day, and
Or like, owning your sexuality by, perhaps being an exotic dancer.
yeah, that too, right? Of just like not only owning your sexuality, but also just like owning what sexuality you are as well. Like there's a lot more openness in terms of that nowadays, but obviously there's still stigmas around that. And just like I would love to see a world where like all that shit is just not worried about anymore, and just
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that because I know there's a cheap joke that could be made about it of like, oh, I bet she is. But at the same time, I would hope that that is something that comes up in the comics, especially given that X-Men comics have been widely read and interpreted as an allegory for people who are gay or
yeah,
otherwise, like, don't
um,
fit into the quote unquote norm that society places on them. It
not
can also be read as like
necessarily just gay people, but yeah,
just that.
just
It can be read that way.
it can definitely be read that way, including like a very poignant scene that is literally a coming out scene in X2.
Yes, where it's the Bobby Drake scene, right? Iceman, where it's
Yeah,
like, where he tells his parents he's a mutant, and they're like,
and that,
"Have you tried
have you just
not
tried
being a
not
mutant?"
being a mutant? And
And
it's
supposedly,
very clearly an allegory to like coming out as being gay, and that story
especially
for
given that
Bobby.
that character is gay in the comics, right?
Yeah, at least nowadays they weren't in that movie. They were like dating, I think like Rogan and
Rogue.
Kitty, right? But yeah, it's very clearly a scene that's meant to emulate the experience of coming out to parents, and it's just that they're coming out as a mutant instead.
To the point where Ian McKellen, an openly gay man, sat in on that scene and offered notes on the direction to help it feel more akin to someone coming out to their parents. Because obviously, as an openly gay man who's like, just stands for a lot of like, advocacy, he's heard so many stories
Yeah,
of people coming out to him. Like the amount of people Ian McKellen told like coming out to him because they know him and they only felt comfortable doing so to him.
fair. And yeah, it's one of those though of just to lower the bar a little bit after trying to be sensible. I can say that imagine like not only a sex therapist but a telepathic sex therapist
That's
being
like
able to like
therapy sessions are
enhance
gonna be
the
so
sex
short.
that you have with them.
It's gonna be the quickest fucking session ever, right? She's gonna immediately jump into your mind, figure out exactly what's wrong,
Well, I was
and then
gonna
solve
say
it in
if you
three
were like
seconds.
a partner of Emma Frost, like holy goddamn shit, that would be an experience.
Well, oddly enough, so a few times in like episodes previously, we've mentioned the idea that Scott Summers, Cyclops, is weirdly attractive to telepaths, and
Yeah,
we
not
joke about the fact
attracted
that,
to. He is attractive to telepaths. Like telepaths are just so hot for Scott.
and we joked about like why does Scott Summers keep cheating on his psychic girlfriends? I actually did some research on this and found out why that's the case.
Okay.
So the reason that's been alluded to in several comics, why telepaths find Scott Summers, they're so hot for Scott, as you said, is that as telepaths, obviously they're constantly reading other people's minds. They can't help it. Sometimes like just they get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And they can, if they're not reading their minds directly, they can read their intentions. Scott Summers, because of the way his mind works and the way his powers work, because he has to be in so much control of himself, of his body and his mind. His mind is like an empty room. Not in like a bad way, it's just that everyone else's mind is like a cacophony of chaos, whereas Scott's mind, it's warm and inviting.
It's
It's
just
like,
it's just
what
concussive beams everywhere.
not it's like walking into like, a nice, calm, sunny room with gentle music in the background and a warm cup of tea sat waiting for you or something like that. And that's the reason why they're so attracted to him. Also, there's one comic where it's Emma Frost, I think,
Hmm.
is talking to Scott, or they're asking like what attracts you to Scott, and it's like, he's the first man I encountered who didn't imagine me naked when I first met him.
So
Because Scott respects him
basically,
too much.
potentially the reason why telepaths may find Scott Summers so attractive is just because he
He's a
doesn't
gentleman.
only see them as a like sexual object. He respects women.
Yeah, there's like some line in one comic where maybe it's Emma Frost or one of the telepaths that he dates who just comments on the fact that they're one of the first Scott was one of the first men they encountered who didn't immediately picture them naked,
So
which they
essentially,
can
just
tell.
one of his superpowers that gets him all women that can read his mind is just this guy respected me.
Mm. He respects you
Imagine
as a
that.
person. Imagine that. Imagine that being the most attractive thing you can do to a woman. Who'd have thunk it, eh? Only in the comic books. It wouldn't happen in real life. But we now have Lucas, attributes and powers. So, her power grid, which is a ranking system of 1 to 7, 1 being an average human and 7 being nigh omnipotent in that regard. Emma Frost is kind of powerful. Her intelligence and strength are a 4. Her speed is a 2. Her durability is a 2. Upgrade to a 5 when she's in a diamond form. Her energy projection is a 5, downgraded to a 1 in her diamond form. And her fighting skills are a 3.
So she just becomes tank. She's diamond.
Becomes tank. So Emma Frost possesses telepathic abilities of a similar caliber to those of Charles Xavier, over which she had an extremely refined level of skill. She's been cited as a world-class telepath, an Omega-class telepath. Additionally, she has also been referred to as among the 5 top telepaths on the entire planet.
I will say that it's slightly disappointing to hear that a diamond form person is a durability of 5 out of 7, when obviously the thing is like diamond's the hardest material we know on planet Earth, and it's like, yeah, 5 out of 7
adamantium exists. If she had an adamantium form, then we'd be talking.
Well, yeah, Wolverine's there, like, come on, impress me.
Also, as well, like a 5 might. This ranking system is bullshit because we've talked in the past about a character has a strength of a 4, which would suggest they can lift like 50 tons. It's like, oh, what are their feats? They lift a 30,000 ton battle.
And also just
something.
a score of 5 is
pretty
exponentially better than a score of 4, is exponentially worse than a score of 6. Like, 5 is very high.
Yes, and we'll get to like the specifics in a moment. But when Wolverine thought to be protected, when Wolverine thought to be protected from her thanks to a level 9 psi shield created by Charles Xavier himself, she stated that she herself was a level 10 and got him anyway.
I
that must have been terrifying. That
the idea of, haha, I have my level 9 psi shield. Haha, I have level 10 piercing psychic abilities.
It's like D&D, and it's like she just rolled that nat 20. It's like, fuck. Her abilities have been stated to rival that of Charles Xavier himself. This statement only proved to be correct in her telepathic defeat of the Professor. So she defeated Charles Xavier in a telepathic mind battle. She punched him in his mind penis and there was nothing he could do about it. So one of the primary abilities
is she came across as like a 5 as like the kind of telepath level. Energy projection level, which 5 out of 7 again does sound like not the best thing ever. But when you think about how Charles Xavier is depicted, like, people will be more familiar with how powerful Charles is as a telepath. Like, yeah, she's on the same level, if not a little bit higher.
Also keep in mind that she only has one specific kind of energy projection, that being psychic energy, and she's still a 5.
Yeah.
Like, there are other characters who can project all kinds of energy who have lower ranking than her, despite the fact they can project more kinds. So it's that thing of like, she might only have like one type of damage, but that damage is real high.
And also, it's just hard to punch. Even if you can get past the psychic ability.
So, telepathy. Emma has displayed telepathic standards of broadcasting and receiving thoughts, mind control, altering perceptions, memories, projecting, offensive blasts of psionic energy, which can cause mental pain or unconsciousness, astral projection, and brain modification on a near worldwide scale. She also, it's worth noting, has a miniature version of Cerebro that she can just put on her head and like just multiply her vast psychic powers by a factor of 10.
Okay, so yeah, that's maybe one thing we'll have to cover one day is Cerebro itself, because I'm unfamiliar with like.
Awesome.
I'm kind of unfamiliar with how Cerebro actually works, because I always just thought it of a location device, but maybe that's just because Charles is being nice while using it.
Yeah.
If it amplifies psychic power, that's way more powerful than Charles
it's
actually
terrifying,
uses it
right?
for.
Yeah, like he alludes to in like the Well, he's not even alluded to. He just says straight up in X-Men 2 of, if I think too hard, I'll kill everyone on Earth. Right? And that's what like Stryker does, right? He puts him into Cerebro and tries to get him to kill all the mutants.
Oh shit! Yeah, because there's the other guy that like fucks with his brain, right? That's basically trying to get him to do that.
Yeah, and he's like, if I think too hard, I'll kill every mutant on Earth. But speaking of like, protecting yourself from someone trying to kill you, their psychic powers, she has a psionic shield which can be erected at will and protect herself or others, making her effectively immune to any and all mental intrusion. She can also cloak herself from telepathic viewing, so she can telepathically mask her presence, and use of her abilities can be detected by other mutants and psychic entities. These defenses can be extended to others around them as well.
Maybe
that's
that's
not
the
perfect, however. I would say it's not perfect, but it can be detected by extremely powerful telepaths.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe that's a better excuse than just, well, we can't find where Magneto is because he wears a helmet. Like, I think they might address it in First Class of like, okay, but even if you are wearing the helmet, there's people around you who aren't.
Yeah, I don't think they ever address why he doesn't just look for Sabretooth.
Yeah.
They just look for Sabretooth or Mystique, who is next to him like 90% of the time.
Like
Either way.
Mystique might be fucking around anywhere being Senator Kelly, but that Sabretooth is just chilling out in base.
Yes. Illusions. She can create realistic telepathic illusions to cause people to experience events that are not actually occurring. These illusions can be used to harm and help. For example, when someone is in pain, she can simply surround them with a more pleasant environment to ease them.
I mean, that's one of the scariest things, similar to...
Just altering your risk, like your perception of reality.
As we were just saying with Charles then, of like, there's that moment where he thinks that he's trying to like help a little girl out by using his powers, but actually another telepath manipulating his brain inside of Cerebro.
Like, yeah, he gives everyone a fucking seizure, right?
I think so, yeah. And then obviously in Logan as well, where just he can't control his brain anymore. He's clearly having not developmental issues. Like
it's hinted to be
Alzheimer's or something like that. And
which is terrifying, right? The most powerful mind in the world, and he doesn't know how to control it.
He doesn't know how to control his mind anymore. And he's just, that brain unleashed is just suddenly killing everyone in sight, or everyone within a certain radius.
That's like one of the most terrifying scenes in that movie, is where the guy's trying to kill Charles, and the only thing he can think to do is just freeze him and everybody else in place. And Wolverine has to like crawl all the way up the hotel.
That's one of the most brutal things, right? It's like the fact that you can see them looking at Wolverine. They're not frozen in time, they're just frozen in place. And they have to watch Wolverine clawing towards them. He's about to stab them in the head.
Also, as well, experiencing what I can only imagine is horrific, unending mental anguish. Because I think about mental pain. Mm-hmm. Like Charles Xavier and other telepaths talk about this. Of eventually, the body, just your nerves die.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in your mind. The pain lasts forever.
At a certain point, you might just want Wolverine to stab you, right?
Yeah. And so, speaking of, causing pain, she is able to negate the powers of others and also induce mental pain telepathically. Conversely, she can also heal trauma through psychic surgery, the power to stimulate or deaden the pain and pleasure centers in a person's brain. She can also have intuitive multilingualism. She can intuitively translate and understand any language. She can control minds, link to the minds of others, and paralyze people with a simple thought. She can mentally sedate a victim. And even if someone is unconscious, she can ensure they will remain unconscious for as long as she wishes by continuing to sedate them just in the back of her head.
Yeah.
She can erase memories, she can track telepaths, she can launch psionic blasts, and then we have psionic lightning. Emma can channel the ambient psionic energy that is in the air onto a target, having a physical effect. So apparently there's just ambient psionic energy in the air, and she can just like lightning of just friction between molecules causes lightning. Apparently you can cause friction between those psionic energies that causes a bolt of psychic energy to strike out wherever she wants it to.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that works, but that does sound fucking terrifying.
Especially considering it being invisible.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about a lot of in media, like psychic powers and telekinesis usually has some sort of like visual guide or something to help you visualize it. In reality, it's fucking. If it was real, it'd be invisible.
Well, that's what we talk about when we were talking about the Invisible Woman, right? Susan Storm. It's just every piece of media that we see, you see the bubbles, you see like the different telekinetic shields that she puts up. You wouldn't see any of those force fields in real life. You would just
they're there for us, the viewer.
Yeah, they are as a media form for us to understand what power she is using at the time. If you were the enemy fighting that person, there's just invisible barriers. An invisible force field, an invisible shit hitting you. Like, it not anything you can perceive, it just being shown to us so we can understand for a visual medium.
Yeah, and I think the best example of something like this I can think of is like that Invisible Man film that came out right at the start of the pandemic. It didn't really do that well because just start the pandemic. But I would recommend, like we talked about, going to watch truncated version. Go watch like the fight scene where it is just a lady in a hallway. So the story is like just guy stalking his ex using his Invisible Man suit, and it is terrifying because you're just like, there's a part where there's a dude holding a gun and his arm snaps, and like, just what do you do? What the fuck do you do in that situation, right? And he takes out like an entire room, like 8 people with guns, because they just can't see what the fuck's going on.
Yeah. And
Hollow Man. Hollow Man's also a good movie where you see an Invisible Man kick the fuck out of people.
I think one
it's terrifying.
That I remember quite well, you know, taking this back to anime, is like in My Hero Academia, where there's like the gentleman thief that use like the invisible platforms to platform off, basically.
Oh yeah.
And escape. Is that against Deku, who's trying to fly through the air? And it's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it takes a minute for Deku to be like, I don't understand what anything, like, where anything is coming from, what is happening.
You can't fight what you can't see, right?
Just, it's that thing of, how do you fight that? How do you fight invisibility?
And the answer is, you got to stop it being invisible. Like, you got to, like, Billy Butcher it. Difficult. He's fighting translucent. He just spits blood in his face so we can see where he is.
Depending on the interpretation of invisibility, right? Because a lot of invisibility characters also have like some level of intangibility that comes with it, or it's invisible force field instead of you. Yeah,
it's broken OP is what we're saying. And speaking of broken OP, secondary mutation. So, as a result of undergoing a body-wide secondary mutation, which was like a thing that happened after, like, I think it was like the Genosian genocide, where a bunch of mutants had secondary mutations to just give mutants new powers so we can write new stories featuring them.
I'm laughing not because of like some horrific event in the comics, just because like in One Piece it's like, oh, you all gained like awakened forms if you're powerful enough. Like,
Super Saiyan, right? New form. New form, new arc, so we can sell new merch and write new stories, right?
Exactly.
It's a very well-worn trope.
It is. Yeah, like, and that thing is, with Dragon Ball, it's just, you're more powerful, whereas, like, with One Piece, all of a sudden it's like, oh, your powers can affect things differently, and you have a different understanding, and, like, that's more akin to, like, a complete new form, like her diamond skin, or diamond form.
Because her diamond form has many advantages, but also many disadvantages. So, Frost possesses the ability to, at will, transform her body into a flexible, organic diamond form. So it does say diamond, so it does appear that it is similar to diamond, just it's organic, so it's just different in that sense.
Flexible as well.
Yes. It is similar in many ways to Colossus's organic steel form. She must transform all parts of her body rather than selectively transforming certain areas, and can remain in this form for an undetermined amount of time. If she is rendered unconscious, difficult given her level of durability, her body will automatically transform back into its normal state. This transformation also alters Frost's personality, causing her to become rather cold-hearted and lose her empathy for others.
That's a great move. Like, she literally.
Well, that's why she called the Ice Queen, right?
Yeah.
The Ice Queen. Like, even though it's not ice, but it looks like it. Emma does not have access to her telepathy while in her diamond form. though she could during her first time after a secondary mutation. So that's like a writer wrote that out because it makes her too powerful. She
Yeah,
can't
all
be
of a sudden, just
invincible and have psychic powers. One or other.
it was like, hang on, wait, no, this makes her way too bad. Just she can be one or the other, but not both at the same time. And I did check as well.
Because why would she not be in a diamond form all the time, right? At that point,
Yeah,
you'd never not be diamond if that was the case.
I was curious when you mentioned Colossus. Colossus, I've just checked on the power grid, does have a durability of 6. So for some reason, the steel hardened form of Colossus
I don't
is
think it's
harder
steel,
than
though.
diamond, and it's like
Yeah, they say steel.
it's steel-like and diamond-like. It's just their mutations, right?
Also, durability is there's different definitions of what it can mean, right? Like for example, diamonds are it's the hardness scale. So diamonds like are very high on the hardness scale, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're as resistant to blunt force trauma as titanium.
I was gonna say because only
diamonds
can cut diamond, but many things can break diamond.
Yes, you can crack diamond, for example.
So yeah, it's hardness in terms of cutting edge and cutting hardness, whereas I think I should say like more brute force attempts to shattering diamond are a lot easier.
Yeah,
so like say a punch.
It's been a while since I like cover this in physics in college, but yeah, there's a difference between like density and hardness and brittleness. There's all sorts of different things that can measure how durable something is. But her powers in this form include superhuman strength. So her physical strength is increased to superhuman levels. At her peak, she can lift approximately 2 tons, which is not really that strong. Like Professor X can probably lift 2 fucking ton. He's got telekinetic powers.
I was gonna say no, because they don't have telekinetic powers, right?
He does a little bit. They say in the comics he's got a little bit of telekinetic powers.
Oh, only a little bit, but it's mostly telepathic, but a little bit of telekinetic.
Yeah, like there's some comics where he talks about like sometimes he uses powers to like move his wheelchair, for example. Superhuman stamina. While transformed, her muscles produce no fatigue toxins during physical activity, which makes sense because she doesn't have muscles anymore.
Yeah.
So she has limitless superhuman stamina, or at least until she is forced to resume her normal state. And then, Lucas, durability. Her diamond form renders her highly resistant to most forms of physical injury. She can resist great impact forces, she's been repeatedly struck with superhuman force without any sort of injury. She's withstood being zapped by a young Cyclops' optic blast, and her Cyclops' optic blast is pure concussive force.
However, what does that mean? Because that doesn't mean, like, he's not necessarily unleashed all 8 gates. Because
do you know what I want as well? I'm thinking, do you know in My Hero Academia, like there's the dude with the naval laser and he fires it into the invisible girl and it refracts?
Yeah.
Can you imagine Cyclops firing his fucking beam through Emma Frost and refracting it through her diamond form and she just fires like the Cooch laser?
For fuck's sake.
You know that's what you'd do.
Why did you have to call it?
Because I know that you'd have that reaction and I want to make you...
I was literally about to be like, oh, do you remember that cool moment in X-Men 97 where like it's Bishop, right? Copies the abilities of
he can absorb
Cyclops.
energy and it's like just shoot me.
He's like, just shoot me, so Cyclops shoots Bishop and then they both like, ah, and then you're just like, you had to go and spoil it all.
The thing that gets me is we've never had it in live action, I hope we do, is Cyclops taking his visor off. I know he has his visor taken off him in like the first X-Men movie.
In the train station, yes, yeah.
Something that's never really gotten across in like the live action movies is that when Cyclops' optic blasts are his entire field of view. It's not like just a laser that comes out where he's looking, like, like Superman's eye lasers, which can also be his entire field of view. Like everything your eyes can see would be what Cyclops' optic blast is hitting.
Hence why he's got a visor, right? Because he only opens up the visor to the amount that he wants the beam to slip through.
Yeah, and like in X-Men 97, where he just takes his visor off and looks dead into like the shipwright, and just the entire room fills with his beams. I want that in live action.
I should say, in X-Men 1 they got close, but I think they were probably attempting to do that. It was a big, massive blast.
Yeah.
But also bear in mind, like, he wasn't intending to do that, and it was only for, like, a second.
Yeah.
So
But
it's
I
just
just
someone
want
ripped his glasses off him, and he immediately closed his eyes, whereas I'd love to see just that adaptation of, yeah, him unleashing every bit of energy intentionally.
just fuck it open all 8 gates. She's also withstood blows from the Hulk and blasts from a dreaming Celestial, despite the Celestial breaking her arm off. That's fucking rough. It showed an incredible upper limit to her powers, as a Juggernaut-powered Colossus was hit by the same blast and sent flying across the city with a hole in his chest. And that's the thing, right? You just said Colossus has a higher durability ranking on the ranking system than Emma Frost does, and he was nearly killed by the same blast that she survived. So it realistically means nothing.
Yeah.
It's whatever the writers want her powers to be, that's what her powers will be.
Exactly, yeah. It's what they deem at the time to be, like, for the better of the story, but it's just one of those things. It's a general,
Yeah.
just, here's a rough idea of
How
over
strong
the,
she is.
like, you know, an average of their abilities rather than very getting into, like, the nitty gritty specifics of, like, well, this one time they did this ridiculous thing, right?
It's not a hard upper limit. It's more a guideline. And
And
if any writer wanted to make her like more significantly more powerful than that, they would need either story justification or presumably permission from a higher up at Marvel to significantly change her power set.
yeah, and I think it's one of those of just generally that's followed, but it's not always. Like, both you and I, you know, shout out a lot of the time Death Battle for finding weird moments where they'll find that one thing that's like an exceptional feat that someone has committed to find the upper echelons of their power. Be like, well, this is the limit that has been shown so far, rather than just necessarily going off like, well, normally they can lift actually like 50 tons, but this
Yes,
one
but
time they lifted a planet.
and for the sake of our argument, we kind of need to know that because this is a literal life in death battle. Its friends are a literal life or death battle, so of course they would use everything they have at their disposal.
Including the thick thighs that save lives.
Yes, and the final thing that she's effectively immune to is temperature differentials. So she can survive temperatures as cold as negative 390 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 7,362 degrees Fahrenheit, which I believe is close to the temperature on the surface of the sun. If I'm remembering the surface of the sun accurately, but I think that might be in 7,000 Celsius, and I don't know the exact calculation for Celsius to Fahrenheit. We'll just check the temperature on the sun in Fahrenheit, because I think in Fahrenheit it's just like 14,000.
So I'm just having a look at the negative. The Kelvin. That would be 38 Kelvin that she can go to minimally. So it's not
Close
like
to absolute zero.
she doesn't go down to absolute zero. And then what was the amount in Fahrenheit?
7,300. Just go for that.
7,300.
And you mentioned that she begins to melt, which must feel weird. Melting must
4,000.
feel
So about
weird.
4,038 Celsius, and then I'll type in temperature of the sun,
Oh, I got the calculation completely wrong.
which is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit
Okay, so
on
close
its
to the surface of the sun.
surface.
Yeah,
And then in the
I think I said
core,
the
it's
surface of the
closer to 27 million Fahrenheit.
well, she'd be fine there, right? It's either way. But yeah, so she close to the temperature on the surface of the sun. Because I was thinking that's
No.
such a specific number. Is that like a number that would like it's the temperature of the surface of the sun?
Yeah, it's not far off, I guess, because it's like, you're 3/4 of the way there, Nelly, to the temperature of the surface of the sun. That's a
I
lot.
imagine as well. How often are you fighting on the surface of the sun? Not often, so it probably doesn't come up much. And then
How
a
often are
final
you
thing
fighting
here.
anyone that could even emulate that heat, right?
Yeah.
Apart from
How
Macargo.
often, like how often is Johnny Storm knocking about and trying to beat all the X-Men? And then a
How
final
often is
power.
she punching a Macargo, Carl? That's what I want to
She
know.
could do it.
Like,
Just
are
suplex
you
her.
aware that that's a Macargo Pokedex entry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like as hot as the surface of the sun.
As hot as the surface of the sun, and then people are like, yeah, but what about billions of lions? It's like, it's as hot as the temperature of the sun.
It's like one Macargo could just go in a very slow straight line and all the lions would die. right? Because not a single one of those lions could actually hurt the macaco because they would immediately burn into flames.
I don't think any billions worth of lions could approach the sun safely. No.
Yeah, I do think that one of the hardest we've laughed is that old stream we did where we talked about what would win, the sun or 1 trillion lions. Remember that? Just the idea
the
of
answer is no matter how many lines you throw at the sun wins, and
I don't think
Macago
you're
is the sun.
comprehending. I don't think you're comprehending though how big of a group of lions 1 trillion lions
You
would be.
can't sniff out the sun with lions.
I think
Karl.
someone calculated like 1 trillion lions would like be so many lions they would like condense into some sort of like meaty star.
Like
That's a lot.
there is technically a point where you throw so many lions at a sun that you overwhelm physics with just meat. But
I
there's
think as
that's
well-
a large number.
Because if you depending on how you define win, if you sent one lion at a time, the next lion when that lion died of old age, they could wait out the sun, which would be a victory. Because 1 trillion
If
lions.
it's one
in
at a
average
time, a
lifespan-
trillion lions' lifetimes. Yeah.
Yeah. An average lion lifespan's like about 20 years, I think, in captivity, maybe a bit longer. Like that's 20 trillion years. Like the life of a sun is like a couple billion. They could wait out the lion and still have a few 100 billion left.
You've at least got to do 2 at a time, right, to create the next generation.
To be fair, yeah. Well, you know, that's a conversation for another day. The conversation about 1 trillion lions. Speaking of living for a very long time, the other power she has in her diamond form is immortality. She does not age when she's in a diamond form, making her effectively immortal as long as she remains within it.
There's a lot of similarities here between like the Thing and Emma Frost's diamond form.
Yeah.
Of just
I think it's just like,
essentially immortal, indestructible being with questions of what goes on the inside. Like, does their heart become diamond?
I think just her entire body is just diamond.
It
There's
does
nothing
sound
in
like
there.
it. They don't seem to say that she's got diamond skin. It does seem to explain it as that she is made of
living.
diamond.
It's like Iceman, right? When he becomes ice, he's living ice at that point.
It's one of my
And
favourite things going back to One Piece as a character who has ice powers that just loses a limb. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll just replace it with ice.
or Sandman, right? We talked about Sandman, where Sandman technically is a single grain of sand. There's like 1 grain of sand, and that is Sandman.
That is the
rest of the body-
Sandman. And then all sand around Sandman is just extraneous sand.
that he controls, which means that you can like effectively destroy. It's like what Boo, right? He talks about Dragon Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Or Boo a cell, where just there's one cell remains, but he's got that say in DNA, so he comes back.
But it's not like Sandman is recreating himself. It's just that there
More
is
sand.
like a nucleus in there.
And if you can capture that, and Spider-Man does in one comic, he captures it and puts it in like a little jar.
Mm.
And he's like, I don't know what to do with him because have you any idea how easy it is to lose a single grain of sand? Also, who wants to fight 1 grain of sand, right? That'd be like, speaking of Dragon Ball, you're like Super Vegito turns into like the gumball and kicks the fuck out of Boo.
He's like, it was easier to fight you when you were just a person.
Because that's I'm just picturing now that single grain of sand just flies directly into Spider-Man's eye right there and starts wiggling around in like his tear duct.
It's so much easier to punch a person than it is a grain of sand, right?
Yeah, just start scratching that cornea Sandman and go. And then her weaknesses, if you can believe it, she has some. So she is unable to access her telepathic abilities in a diamond form, but as a side effect, she is immune to all telepathic attack. So that's quite nice. And then she has familial immunity. So this is a thing that's common with mutants, where mutants' powers don't work on siblings. For example, Scott Summers, his powers don't work on his brother Havoc, and Havoc's powers don't work on him.
And also the secret third brother, right?
Yeah, the other like Summers brother that no one gives a fuck about.
Yeah, Panic or whatever his name is, I don't remember, but
they do have like a great moment. They're speaking of like, you know, the just open all 8 gates in like that X-Men Evolution show. There's a great moment where like Havoc and Scott are like stranded in the ocean. There's a fucking tidal wave coming at Scott. And it's like, what do we do? Because they're in like a fucking rowing boat, and Scott just takes his glasses off and cuts the tidal wave in half.
Yeah.
They're also like, how do we like, you know, get rescue? And Scott's like, I've got this, and just periodically fires off a fucking beam into the sky.
flaring
Man,
it
that
off.
flare's fucking massive. Now here, Lucas, some notes and trivia. So, the White Queen has designed a gun-like device that she once used to exchange minds with Storm.
Okay.
She had a gun that changed minds. She has also been gifted a pair of knuckle dusters by Tony Stark, which incorporate repulsor technology.
Oh, okay. I literally thought you were just talking like regular knuckles.
And the reason why Tony Stark gave them is because Emma's known lovers have consisted of Prince Namor, Tony Stark, and Cyclops.
And Namor's got a thing for telepaths, though.
Well, I think it's Namor's got a thing for like white blonde women.
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, Susan Storm doesn't necessarily. Yeah, she doesn't have telepathy.
Lucas.
But yeah, if people don't know, Namor's been after both Emma Frost and Susan Storm.
Lucas, despite once seemingly have killed a horse, Emma is good at horse riding.
Oh no!
I'm imagining she got on it in a diamond form and Brocket's back,
Oh,
right?
don't say that. No.
I don't know how she did that.
I'm a bit sensitive to the subject right now because it's just been the Grand National.
God, how many horses died?
Yeah, I don't know.
So it's
I
not
don't
the Grand
bother
National,
now.
it's the fucking horse annihilator.
The
People wonder
local
what we're
horse
talking about.
annihilator, like I live down the road from where it happens.
The Grand National, like, there's a quantifiable percentage of horses that die every year to the point where they have a mobile horse execution squad who go out with a little tent and shoot the horse there on the field. And you can bet on it. The Grand National fucking sucks.
It fucking sucks. It's like the worst thing about Liverpool.
It's the Grand National and horse and fox hunting.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much of that over here, which is nice.
They keep trying though, right? Like, oh, it's tradition. It's like what? Fucking annoying, a fox.
I meant Liverpool specifically. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It happening too much over here, but like the fact that one of Liverpool's grand traditions is like the fucking Grand National.
The horse annihilator. Let's go. There's a running gag through multiple comics of Emma showing an aversion to mainstream things like pizza or blockbuster movies. So she's a hipster.
Okay.
She's one of those people like, I've never watched a Marvel movie.
You know what? I respect it. There was a good peak in the middle. If you're into comic books, they're worth watching. That's all I'm going to say. But, you know...
Brother Christian was the first person to comment on the fact that white was her colour when she wore that colour to a high school dance.
It's that weird trope of like, oh, why are there so many women with like white outfits? That just awful kind of idea of purity and whiteness within like bridal gowns and like how women wearing white are like untempered with and all this jazz, and it's got such a horrible patriarchal like history to it. It's like any woman that's colour is white, it's like, oh, why?
But Emma Frost owns that shit.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah, 100%. But
and finally, Emma has described herself as a sapiosexual, and that is the term used by like weirdos who like, I'm attracted to someone's mind, and it only like, and I'm not going to say that that's the case for Emma Frost because she can literally read people's minds. Of course, she's primarily going to be attracted to someone's mind when that is the primary way she interacts with the world.
I don't necessarily think like weirdo is the right term to use. There are some people who like, I'm sure that is the case for.
The fact that it's always, at least as far as I've seen it discussed, it's people. It seems very, what's the word now? Pretentious to describe yourself as like, I'm not attracted to people. I'm attracted to their minds. And it's okay. So why do you exclusively date really attractive rich people then?
I'm sure that there is an element of that subset similar to with like, you know, how many quote unquote nice guys are actually nice people. It's like, there's a lot of people out there who will mislabel themselves thinking that they have like good intentions, but actually they secretly totally don't. But
I feel that in Emma Frost's case, it is actually literally true because she can read your mind.
Yeah, there's definitely not a case with Emma Frost. So I can 100% believe it coming from a telepath because she can literally read your brain.
Yes, and it also mentions that for the Hellfire Gala, Emma Frost frequently has one of the best costumes because it's a point of pride for her that she has the best costume. And I've just sent a picture of you now. I'll pinch her to you, and that's her first costume inviting people to the Hellfire Gala.
That's setting a fucking statement right there.
It is, right?
Just dig off.
Look at that bullshit.
They were doing this shit way before Marvel Rivals of like, let's just make everyone hot as fuck.
And that's the thing about the Hellfire Gala as well. Like, every redesign is 10 on 10 money.
Yeah.
Every single one is fantastic.
It's why
There's
it's
not
one
a
of the best
single like
things.
Hellfire Gala look that's not 100% just an improvement on the original design. And one day we'll cover it. We'll have to cover it in a video so we can put all the clips in.
I think we've definitely mentioned it a few times. I don't know whether we technically covered it as a topic.
I'd like to cover it as an entire topic.
I don't know whether we have or not. Last thing is,
no, we talked about it maybe in the Kingpin video, because Kingpin has like his fucking like Emperor Kingpin outfit.
We've definitely talked about it multiple times, but we do.
No, She-Hulk episode. We mentioned the She-Hulk episode because we talked about the fashion designer in that.
But again, we do like 4 topics a week. It's hard to remember after years, like technically what we have and haven't covered. And I don't think we've done an episode on it, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we had.
I don't think we've done an episode on the Hellfire Gala specifically. We've definitely mentioned it because it's fucking awesome.
It's the coolest shit, right?
And like, just looking through like every single one of her redesigns is fucking sick. Every single one. Because she's just the best. Like when you just stroll in and be like, yeah, I'm the fucking Don. Let's go.
I can't really argue with the idea that she is the best because she invented the idea of the Hellfire Gala.
I'm also imagining as well, like, she would have to like marry Tony Stark, right? Because how the fuck is he going to get a diamond ring? That matches the quality of woman when she's literally made of diamonds.
Wonder, like, could you technically damage her, like a diamond herself, and then she heals?
I'm not sure. It doesn't mention like what happened to her arm after that Celestial knocked it off. It's a durability section.
If she
usually
just
when a character
put a diamond arm on a ring and wore that as an engagement ring.
Yeah, did it grow back? I know an Iceman, for example, if you cut his arm off, it won't fucking matter. He just grow it back.
Well, when he's in ice form, at least. I don't know.
When he's in ice form, yeah, it won't kill him. But it didn't mention what happened to her arm, so I'm unsure. If like you would be able to like chip off a piece of a diamond form and just use that as a diamond, or if it once you turn back, it just disappear into the ether.
I do quite like the idea of wearing an entire ring where her forearm is the diamond, just her entire arm and hand is just the diamond like placement within the ring.
I'm just imagining though when like her and Tony Stark have an argument, and like she goes up and just delivers the backhand, but turns the diamond halfway through. Do you know the thing of like, you know, a rich woman slapping someone with all the rings on her hand? Sort of fucking it, and those like the entire hand is diamond. And she'd take your head off, right? Like she went up and like I forget what it is now. It's do you ever read like the Vampire Apprentice books?
No.
They're pretty decent. There's like a film based on the first one, and in that they talk about how vampires fight. Because vampires, the lore of vampires in that series is that they have really, really, really dense fingernails.
Okay.
And really sharp, and that's why, and really sharp teeth. And they say vampires don't fight using their fists because that's stupid. Instead, they just slash with their like knife-like fingernails with superhuman speed. Now, just imagine that if, like, you know, she went and got her nails done and then turned to diamond form and went.
Like, shape all of your nails into time.
It hurts so much, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just, or just a kicking you right in the balls.
You know, that'd suck.
Okay, as well, what would be like, okay, to end on, what would be the best pose to strike when you turn to diamond? It's like you think, you know, going down the catwalk for the Hellfire Gala, what's the pose you've got to strike when you turn to diamond? And why is it like the Sailor Moon pose? Bam. You've got to hit that pose like the lights hit you.
If I was able to do it, I think the obvious answer has to be the like Dio Jojo pose, right? If you could like people. As you're forming like the backwards pose, turn into diamond. There's nothing more powerful a statement.
Or what you do is you stage dive, turn to diamond, and just land and create a perfect crater of yourself
Just
in
Snow
the
Angel,
ground.
but you're doing it on concrete.
Yeah, into solid concrete. Leave your mark, literally.
What the fuck is the Walk of Fame when I can just like Snow Angel in concrete?
Well, it's like Iceman, right? Because I think Iceman, when there's one of the Hellfire Galas, when he rocks up, he just like slides down the red carpet on his ice. It's like, that's fucking sick. That's so good. Or Storm has like a storm cloud fall around as a dress. And it's like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
that's so good.
What dress are you wearing to this event? A fucking toy. I
That'd be great.
respect
Like
it.
the Lady Gaga in the Marvel universe would be like, I don't know what to do. How do I beat this? I've got to dress men in meat, right? I've got to dress men in meat and like Emma Frost rocking up when she's made of diamond. The hell? That's the idea of like, if they could, you know, a Marvel show I'd want is I would just want the Hellfire Gala.
Oh yeah.
I would want it to be an entire show. And I'd want it to be filmed exactly how they film Project Runway.
Yeah. 100%.
And I want cameos from all the actors. And I want every actor to just get to put on a sick costume and just strut their stuff.
But
And we'll
like
never get
every
it.
week, it becomes like a reality TV show of like every week, one Marvel character gets like voted off, and in this competition they have to strive harder and harder to just
Yeah.
get cooler and cooler outfits over time.
I prefer it to Doomsday. Do you know what we get in Doomsday? I would much prefer just the Hellfire Gala, and it's every actor reprises their role one last time to put on a sick costume, and it's just a 2-hour montage of them walking down the catwalk in a sick costume. It would. I'm
It's
sure
like,
them fighting should be cool too, though.
I'm sure it will be, but you compare the MCU skins in Marvel Rivals to the Marvel Rivals skins, and they all look so bland and boring.
Yeah. Not elevated like the comics at all.
No.
But we're never going to get in like the MCU Cyclops' costume where he just has a giant X over his face.
No, that's
He wears like a balaclava with an X on it.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the version of Charles Xavier where he's got like a giant X helmet on.
That works as well, like the mini Cerebro that it has. But either way, that's Emma Frost. Hopefully, we'll learn something about the White Queen. I certainly have. She's awesome.
Founder of the coolest shit in Marvel.
It's the best. Like they should do it every week. It should be what Marvel is. Like they should just like someone should come in and say, okay, we don't make comics anymore. We're a fashion company.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
Like, imagine if they start making couture fashion based on that.
I wouldn't want it to be couture. I wouldn't want it to be expensive. But the fact that like one of the coolest jackets I've got is just like that Spider-Gwen jacket that I've got. That like they sold in Disney stores for a couple of months and then gave up. Like, God damn it.
Do you know what I'd want? I would want the fit Hugh Jackman wears in the Wolverine movie, where he wears a wife beater under a denim shirt, or under a flannel shirt, under a denim shirt, under a denim jacket, under a leather jacket, and everyone's like, "That's Canada.
Hang on.
That's Canada, motherfucker. Let's go."
God.
But that you've never seen more layers, more Canada on one man. Sell that fit. The Wolverine fit of just you've never like. That's not the Canadian tuxedo. That's like the Canadian 3-piece.
Canadian 5-piece, apparently.
Let's go. But either way, yeah. Hopefully people will learn something about Emma Frost today.
Yeah, hopefully so. Yeah, thank you all for listening, watching, etc., etc. But yeah,
Yes.
make sure you know, like, subscribe, share the video, leave us a rating on podcast services, do all that jazz, and thank you all for watching.
Yeah. Continue the conversation in our Discord found below. Cheers.
Hell yeah.